You suffer more from resistance than from reality, because reality only happens once, but resistance makes you fight it 1,000 times inside your mind. You have been taught to believe that your pain comes from the event, the loss, the delay, the betrayal, the words someone said, the door that closed, or the life that did not unfold the way you expected. But if reality alone was the true cause of suffering, why does one person lose something and slowly find peace, while another keeps bleeding from the same memory for years? Why does one difficult moment pass, yet the mind keeps dragging it back as if it is happening again? The truth is simple, but painful to see. Reality may hurt you, but resistance keeps the wound open. Reality says, "This happened." Resistance says, "This should not have happened." Reality says, "This is where you are." Resistance says, "You should be somewhere else." Reality asks you to meet the moment, but resistance pulls you into anger, regret, fear, and endless arguments with life. Buddhist teachings show that suffering does not come only from pain. It comes from clinging, rejecting, demanding, and fighting what already is. The mind turns one moment into a prison when it refuses to accept that the door has already closed. It creates extra pain by needing life to be fair before it can be peaceful. It keeps asking the past to explain itself, keeps asking people to become different, and keeps asking the present to apologize before the heart is allowed to rest. But tonight, something in you can begin to loosen. The quiet war inside can start to fade. You may begin to see that acceptance is not weakness. It is not giving up. It is not pretending pain did not matter. Acceptance is the moment you stop giving resistance the power to hurt you more than reality ever did. This is not just a teaching about suffering. This is a teaching about freedom. Because the moment you stop fighting life as it is, you begin to recover the peace that resistance has been stealing from you. Are you ready? Let's begin. The moment you begin to see that resistance is heavier than reality, something deep inside you becomes ready to listen. Because most of the pain you carry is not only from what happened, it is from the silent argument that began after it happened. It is from the part of the mind that keeps standing in front of life with clenched fists, saying, "No, not this, not now, not me." And this is where the first doorway opens. A painful thing can happen in a second, but the mind can stretch it across years. One word can be spoken once, but the heart can repeat it every night. One loss can occur in time, but resistance can turn it into a daily wound. This is why Buddhist wisdom begins by asking us to look carefully, not only at the pain itself, but at what the mind does after pain arrives. There is a kind of suffering that begins very quietly. It does not always come with tears. It does not always come with shouting. Sometimes it begins with one sentence inside the mind. "This should not be happening." That sentence may look small, but it carries a whole storm. It carries rejection. It carries shock. It carries the belief that life has made a mistake. It carries the demand that the present moment should be different before you are willing to breathe inside it. And the moment the mind says this, pain is no longer just pain. Pain becomes a battle. In Buddhist teaching, pain is part of human life. Bodies age, people change, loved ones leave, plans fail, praise disappears. The world does not always move according to our wishes. This truth may feel harsh, but it is not meant to make the heart hopeless. It is meant to wake the heart up. Buddhism does not say that pain is beautiful. It does not say that loss is easy. It does not say that betrayal does not hurt, or that sickness should be welcomed with a smile. It simply says that pain is one thing, and the suffering we add to pain is another. This is a very important difference. If your hand touches something hot, there is pain. That pain has a message. It tells you to move your hand. It protects you. But after the hand is moved, the mind may begin a second fire. Why did this happen to me? I am so careless. Life is unfair. This always happens. I should have known better. I cannot believe this happened. Now the original pain has ended, but the mind is still burning. This second fire is suffering. The Buddha often pointed toward this difference. There is the first arrow, and there is the second arrow. The first arrow is what life brings. The second arrow is what the mind adds. The first arrow may be unavoidable. The second arrow is often created by resistance, judgment, fear, and clinging. Someone disappoints you, and that hurts. That is the first arrow. Then the mind says, "They should never have done this. I will never trust anyone again. I am not valued. This proves my life is broken." That is the second arrow, and many people do not realize they are not only suffering from the event, they are suffering from the story they keep building around the event. When the mind says, "This should not be happening," it refuses to meet reality as it is. It does not mean the mind is bad. It means the mind is afraid. It wants safety. It wants order. It wants life to follow the picture it created. It wants people to act according to its hopes. It wants the body to stay strong, the heart to stay protected, the future to stay clear, and the past to remain clean. But life is not always obedient. Life moves with causes, conditions, changes, endings, beginnings, and surprises. The mind suffers when it expects life to ask permission before changing. This is where resistance begins. Resistance is not only saying no with your mouth. Sometimes resistance is the tightness in your chest when the truth appears. It is the anger that rises when something does not match your desire. It is the endless replay of what you wish you had said. It is the silent punishment you give yourself for not knowing then what you know now. It is the refusal to accept that someone is who their actions have shown them to be. It is the exhausting hope that yesterday will somehow return and correct itself. Pain becomes suffering when the mind believes the present moment is not allowed to exist. But the present moment does not disappear because we reject it. It remains. And because it remains, our rejection only traps us beside it. This is why resistance is so tiring. You are not only dealing with the pain, you are also trying to push away something that is already here. Think of a person standing in the rain, screaming at the sky because it should be sunny. The rain does not stop because of the screaming. The body only becomes more tense. The heart becomes more bitter. The mind becomes more exhausted. But the moment that person says, "It is raining," something changes. The rain may still be falling, but the war with the rain begins to end. Now they can open an umbrella. They can find shelter. They can walk carefully. Acceptance does not stop the rain, but it stops the useless battle against the rain. This is the wisdom many people misunderstand. Acceptance is not saying, "I like this." Acceptance is saying, "This is what is here." It is not agreement. It is honesty. It is not weakness. It is contact with reality. You cannot respond wisely to a moment you are still refusing to see. You cannot heal from a wound you keep denying. You cannot move through pain while your mind is still demanding that pain should not exist. When the mind says, "This should not be happening," it often believes it is protecting you. It thinks resistance will give you control. It thinks if it argues hard enough, reality may soften. But resistance does not change what has already happened. It only steals the energy you need to respond. It turns the mind into a courtroom where life is always on trial. And while the trial continues, your peace waits outside the door. This is why two people can face similar pain and suffer differently. One person may say, "This hurts, but it is here. What is the next wise step?" Another person may say, "This should not be happening. This is unfair. I cannot accept this." The first person still feels pain, but they are not feeding it with endless resistance. The second person is not only feeling pain, they are also carrying anger at reality, fear of the future, regret about the past, and a deep demand that life should be different before peace is possible. Buddhist wisdom teaches that everything arises because of causes and conditions. Nothing appears from nowhere. A harsh word, a broken relationship, a failed plan, a sickness, a delay, a disappointment, all of these come from many visible and invisible causes. This does not mean everything is right. It means everything has conditions behind it. When the mind understands this, it becomes less personal with pain. It stops saying, "Life is attacking me," and begins to see, "This is the result of causes and conditions." That shift is powerful because the mind suffers deeply when it turns every unwanted moment into a personal insult. Resistance often begins with the belief that life should be fair in the way the ego defines fairness. If you were kind, people should be kind back. If you worked hard, things should work out. If you loved someone deeply, they should not hurt you. If you planned carefully, nothing should fall apart. These wishes are understandable. The heart longs for balance. But life does not always move according to human ideas of fairness. When the mind cannot accept this, it suffers twice. It suffers from what happened, and it suffers from the belief that what happened has broken the laws of life. But Buddhist teaching invites us into a deeper kind of fairness. Not the fairness of always getting what we want, but the fairness of cause and effect. When there is craving, there is tension. When there is clinging, there is fear. When there is resistance, there is suffering. When there is awareness, there is space. When there is acceptance, there is peace. This kind of fairness is not always emotionally comfortable, but it is dependable. It shows us where freedom begins. The mind says, "This should not be happening," because it wants control. It wants reality to bend toward preference, but control is often an illusion. You can choose your actions, but you cannot control every result. You can speak with kindness, but you cannot control how someone receives your words. You can care for your body, but you cannot stop every change. You can love someone, but you cannot own their heart. You can prepare for tomorrow, but you cannot command tomorrow to obey. When the mind forgets this, it suffers every time life proves it is larger than personal desire. Pain becomes suffering when the mind makes a demand that reality cannot fulfill. It demands that the past be different. It demands that people be different. It demands that uncertainty disappear. It demands that loss feel painless. It demands that change ask for permission. These demands may feel natural, but they place the heart in a battle it cannot win. You cannot defeat the past by hating it. You cannot force people into wisdom by resenting their ignorance. You cannot make uncertainty vanish by worrying about it all night. You cannot make pain disappear by calling it unacceptable. The first step in Buddhist practice is seeing clearly, not fixing immediately, not escaping immediately, not decorating pain with positive words, just seeing. Anger is here, fear is here, grief is here, disappointment is here. This simple naming creates space. It helps the mind stop becoming the emotion. Instead of saying, "I am broken," you begin to see pain is present. Instead of saying, "My life is ruined," you begin to see the mind is having a thought of ruin. This is not a trick. It is training in awareness. Awareness is gentle, but it is not weak. It is like a lamp in a dark room. The lamp does not fight the darkness. It simply shines, and because it shines, the darkness no longer controls what you see. In the same way, awareness does not need to attack pain. It simply notices pain without adding more confusion. When awareness is present, you can feel sadness without drowning in the story that sadness will last forever. You can feel fear without obeying every fearful thought. You can feel anger without letting anger become your identity. Resistance, however, removes this space. It makes the mind collapse into the experience. When pain comes, resistance says, "This is terrible. This must stop. I cannot bear this." Suddenly, The pain feels bigger than the body, bigger than the moment, bigger than life itself. But often what you cannot bear is not the raw pain. It is the mind's panic around the pain. It is the belief that this moment should not exist, and that you are somehow unsafe because it does. This is why mindfulness is so central in Buddhist teaching. Mindfulness brings you back from the argument into direct contact. It asks, what is actually happening right now? Not what might happen tomorrow, not what should have happened yesterday, not what this means about your worth. Just this breath, this sensation, this feeling, this thought, this moment. When you return to what is actually here, suffering often becomes less solid. The mind may still hurt, but it stops building a whole prison out of one stone. There is a quiet humility in saying, this is happening. The ego does not like this humility because the ego wants to be the author of reality. It wants to decide what should arrive, what should leave, who should change, who should apologize, what should be easy, and what should never touch your life. But the awakened heart learns a different strength. It learns to bow to what is already here, not because it loves pain, but because it loves peace more than argument. The phrase, "this should not be happening," often hides another phrase beneath it. I cannot be okay unless this changes. That belief is the root of much suffering. It makes peace dependent on conditions. It tells you that you can only breathe when life becomes pleasant. You can only relax when people behave. You can only heal when the past explains itself. You can only feel whole when nothing is uncertain. But Buddhist wisdom gently shows that peace built on perfect conditions is fragile. Real peace begins when you discover a steadiness that can exist even when life is not arranged the way you hoped. This does not mean you become passive. Acceptance is not sitting in a burning house and calling it wisdom. If something can be changed, you take wise action. If a boundary is needed, you set it. If help is needed, you ask for it. If a situation is harmful, you step away when you can. But you do not waste your life arguing with the fact that the fire exists. You see clearly, then act clearly. Resistance clouds action. Acceptance sharpens it. Many people fear acceptance because they think it means the pain wins, but resistance is often what gives pain its throne. When you keep saying, this should not be happening, you keep kneeling before the event, as if it has the power to decide your entire inner life. Acceptance removes that throne. It says, this happened, and now I will meet it with as much wisdom as I can. That is not defeat. That is dignity. A person who accepts reality is not a person without feelings. They may cry. They may grieve. They may feel anger rise, they may need time, but they do not add the poison of denial to the wound. They do not keep demanding that the moment become another moment before they are willing to care for themselves. They allow the heart to feel what it feels without turning feeling into identity. They understand that pain is a visitor, not the whole house. This is especially important when life brings disappointment. Disappointment becomes suffering when the mind compares reality to the picture it was holding. You thought someone would stay. You thought a plan would succeed. You thought your life would look a certain way by now. Then reality arrives differently, and the mind says, no, this is not the story I wanted. The pain of the difference is real, but suffering deepens when the mind keeps worshipping the rejected version of life and refusing the life that is actually here. Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to stop caring. It asks you to stop clinging. Caring is open-handed. Clinging is tight-fisted. Caring says, this matters to me. Clinging says, I cannot be okay unless this stays. Caring allows love to breathe. Clinging turns love into fear. Caring can meet change with grief and grace. Clinging meets change with panic and resistance. When the mind says, "This should not be happening," it is often clinging to a version of life that has already changed. One of the deepest causes of suffering is the belief in permanence. The mind wants people to remain the same, feelings to remain the same, health to remain the same, success to remain the same, and comfort to remain the same. But Buddhism teaches impermanence. Everything that arises changes. This is not punishment. This is the nature of life. A flower opens and fades. A season arrives and passes. A child grows. A body ages. A mood shifts. A relationship changes form. Even the pain you feel is not fixed. It moves, rises, falls, tightens, softens, returns, and passes again. When you understand impermanence, the sentence, "This should not be happening," begins to lose some of its power. Because change is not a mistake in life. Change is life. Loss is painful, but it is not outside the law of existence. Disappointment hurts, but it is not proof that you have been singled out by the universe. Uncertainty is uncomfortable, but it is not a personal failure. The mind suffers when it treats natural change as an error. This understanding can soften the heart. You begin to see that many things you resisted were not enemies, they were messengers. A delay showed you your impatience. A loss showed you your attachment. A conflict showed you where you still needed approval. A disappointment showed you the danger of placing your peace in someone else's hands. A difficult season showed you the parts of yourself that were tired of pretending. This does not make pain pleasant, but it gives pain meaning without forcing it. Still, the mind will resist. It will say, "But this is unfair." It will say, "But I did not deserve this." It will say, "But they should have known better." And sometimes the mind is right in a human sense. Some things are unfair, some actions are cruel, some losses are heavy, some people should have done better. Buddhist wisdom does not deny this. It simply asks, will repeating this truth every day free you, or will it keep you tied to the moment that hurt you? There is a difference between recognizing harm and living inside resistance to harm. Recognizing harm allows wisdom. Resistance keeps the nervous system trapped in the past. You can say, "That was wrong," without spending your whole life burning inside it. You can say, "That hurt me," without making the wound your permanent name. You can say, "I deserved better," while still choosing not to let bitterness become your home. The moment pain becomes suffering, the mind usually leaves the present. It travels backward into regret or forward into fear. It says, "If only I had done this." Then it says, "What if this never gets better?" It creates a bridge between the past and the future, then makes you walk across it all night. But the body is still here. The breath is still here. The room is still here. The present moment may contain pain, but it rarely contains all the horrors the mind adds to it. This is why returning to the breath is not a small practice. It is a way of stepping out of the mind's war. One conscious breath says, "I am here." Another breath says, "This moment is survivable." Another says, "I do not need to solve my whole life right now." Slowly, the mind learns that it can meet pain without turning it into panic. It can feel discomfort without creating a disaster. It can allow reality to be present without becoming its enemy. The heart begins to heal when it stops demanding that pain justify itself before it is allowed to pass. Many people stay stuck because they are waiting for an explanation. They believe that if they understand why something happened, then they can finally be free. Understanding can help, but it is not always available. Some people will never explain themselves clearly. Some losses will never feel logical. Some endings will never give you the closure your mind asks for. If your peace depends on an answer that may never come, resistance will keep holding the key. Buddhist wisdom offers another key, release. Release does not mean you approve. It means you stop tying your life to the impossible demand that the past become understandable before you continue. You can carry a lesson without carrying the chain. You can remember without reliving. You can grieve without resisting grief. You can let pain move through you without letting it build a permanent temple inside you. The sentence, "This should not be happening," also creates loneliness. It makes you feel as if your pain is abnormal, as if everyone else received a life that works while yours has broken. But when you look deeply, you see that every human being meets unwanted moments. Behind many smiles are silent battles. Behind many achievements are hidden fears. Behind many peaceful faces are old storms they learned to stop feeding. Pain is not proof that you are separate from life. Pain is proof that you are human. This recognition brings compassion. You stop attacking yourself for hurting. You stop saying, "I should be over this by now." That is another form of resistance. It is pain resisting pain. You feel sadness, then you judge the sadness. You feel fear, then you shame the fear. You feel anger, then you hate yourself for being angry. This creates layers of suffering. The original emotion may be heavy, but the judgment makes it heavier. A wise heart learns to say, "This is sadness," not "I am weak." This is fear, not "I am failing." This is grief, not "I will never be okay." When emotions are met with kindness, they move more naturally. When they are attacked, they hide, harden, or return with more force. Resistance makes the inner world unsafe. Acceptance makes healing possible. This is why Buddhist compassion is not only for others. It begins with how you meet your own suffering. When the mind says, "This should not be happening," compassion says, "This is painful, and I can be gentle with myself here." Resistance tightens. Compassion softens. Resistance demands. Compassion allows. Resistance says, "Get out of this feeling." Compassion says, "Let me sit with you while this feeling moves." There is a deep strength in this softness. Anyone can fight reality in their mind. Many people do it every day, but it takes courage to stop, breathe, and look directly at what hurts. It takes courage to say, "This is here, and I will not abandon myself." It takes courage to feel pain without using blame as shelter. It takes courage to stop asking life to be different for one moment and ask instead, "What is this moment teaching me about freedom?" As you begin to see this clearly, pain no longer has to become endless suffering. The mind may still react. It may still whisper, "This should not be happening." But now another voice can rise beneath it, quieter and wiser. "But it is happening, and I can meet it." That one sentence changes everything. It brings you back from resistance to reality. It brings you back from panic to presence. It brings you back from war to awareness. Reality is not always gentle, but fighting reality makes it harsher. Pain is not always avoidable, but suffering can be softened when the mind stops adding resistance. The wound may still need time, but it does not need the extra weight of denial. The heart may still ache, but it does not need to be punished for aching. The path may still be uncertain, but it does not need to be walked with fists closed. This is the first lesson. Pain becomes suffering the moment the mind says, "This should not be happening," because that sentence separates you from the only place where healing can occur, the present moment. It sends you into an argument with life. It makes you fight the rain instead of finding shelter. It makes you relive the wound instead of tending to it. It makes peace conditional on a reality that no longer exists. But the moment you stop saying, "This should not be happening," and begin to say, "This is happening, how can I meet it wisely?" the whole inner world changes. The pain may not disappear at once, but the suffering begins to lose its fuel. The mind stops swinging at shadows. The body begins to unclench. The heart finds a little more room to breathe. And that little room is where Buddhist wisdom begins its quiet work, not by removing every difficulty from your life, but by teaching you how to stop turning every difficulty into a war, not by promising that pain will never visit, but by showing you that pain does not have to become your prison, not by forcing reality to change before you can rest, but by helping you discover a peace that can sit inside reality without being destroyed by it. So when the next painful moment comes and the old voice rises again saying, "This should not be happening," pause, feel the breath, notice the tightening, see the resistance as resistance. Then return gently to what is true. This is here. This is painful. This is not the whole of life. This can be met. This can be held. This can be passed through. And from that place, suffering begins to loosen its grip because the mind has stopped fighting the door and has finally begun to walk through it. And once the mind begins to see that pain does not have to become a prison, another hidden truth appears. Most of the battles that exhaust you are not happening in the room around you. They are happening in the rooms your mind keeps building. One moment arrives, one person speaks, one plan fails, one door closes, and before reality has even finished unfolding, the mind has already created 10 possible meanings, 20 possible dangers, and 100 invisible enemies. This is how resistance grows. It does not only reject what is here, it creates a whole world around what it fears might come next. There is a strange kind of tiredness that comes from fighting things that have not happened. The body sits still, but the mind is running. The room is quiet, but inside arguments are happening. The day may be ordinary, but the heart feels surrounded. This is the work of resistance. It takes one difficult moment and turns it into a battlefield with no clear beginning and no clear ending. A single message is not answered, and the mind begins its war. Maybe they are angry. Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe they are losing interest. Maybe this is how it begins. Maybe I will be abandoned again. The phone has only been silent, but resistance has already written a whole painful story. The reality is one unanswered message. The suffering is the 100 imagined battles the mind creates around it. Someone speaks with a cold tone, and the mind does not simply hear the tone. It begins to defend, explain, accuse, prepare, and rehearse. It remembers every other time someone spoke like that. It predicts every future conflict that may follow. It builds a courtroom, a battlefield, and a funeral for the relationship in the space of a few seconds. The moment itself may be small, but resistance gives it a history and a future. That is why the heart becomes so heavy. Buddhist wisdom teaches that the untrained mind does not simply experience life. It adds, colors, exaggerates, protects, and invents. This is not because the mind is evil. It is because the mind is trying to keep you safe. It searches for danger before danger arrives. It looks for pain before pain is confirmed. It tries to prepare you for every possible wound. But in trying to protect you from future suffering, it often makes you suffer now. This is one of the quiet tragedies of resistance. It tells you it is helping you prepare, but much of the time it is only teaching your body to live inside events that do not exist. You feel the fear of rejection before anyone has rejected you. You feel the shame of failure before anything has failed. You feel the grief of loss before anything has left. You feel the pressure of tomorrow before tomorrow has opened its eyes. The mind calls this preparation, but the nervous system experiences it as pain. A difficult moment is already enough. A hard conversation is enough. A disappointment is enough. A delay is enough. A loss is enough. But resistance refuses to stop there. It says, what if this becomes worse? What if this never changes? What if this proves something terrible about me? What if I cannot handle what comes next? In that moment, the mind is no longer facing reality. It is fighting imagination. This is why people can feel drained even when nothing visible has happened. They have spent the whole day in mental combat. They fought conversations that never took place. They defended themselves against accusations no one made. They explained their heart to people who were not in the room. They prepared for disasters that never arrived. By night, the body is tired, not because life demanded so much, but because the mind kept multiplying one moment into many battles. Resistance turns pain into a chain reaction. First, something happens. Then the mind says, "This should not be happening." Then it asks, "Why is this happening?" Then it asks, "What does this mean?" Then it says, "What if this keeps happening?" Then it says, "What if I am not safe?" Then it begins searching the past for proof. Then it begins searching the future for threats. In a few moments, the original event is buried under layers of fear, memory, prediction, and judgment. This is how suffering expands. It does not expand because the moment itself keeps growing. It expands because the mind keeps feeding it with attention. Attention is like water. Whatever you water grows. If you water awareness, peace grows. If you water fear, fear grows. If you water resentment, resentment grows. If you water imagined battles, the body begins to believe those battles are real. The body does not always know the difference between what is happening and what the mind is rehearsing. When you replay an argument, your jaw tightens. When you expect rejection, your chest contracts. When you picture failure, your stomach turns. When you rehearse bad news, your breathing changes. The event may not be happening, but the body responds as if it is. This is why resistance feels so physical. It lives not only in thought, but in the muscles, the breath, the sleep, the appetite, the energy, and the nervous system. Buddhist teaching invites us to become aware of this process before it carries us away. The point is not to shame the mind for creating stories. The point is to wake up in the middle of the story and ask, is this reality or is this a battle my mind is imagining? That one question creates space. It does not remove every fear at once, but it opens a door. It reminds you that not every thought is truth. Not every fear is prophecy. Not every inner alarm is wisdom. The mind often speaks with confidence, even when it is guessing. It says, "This will end badly." It says, "They do not care." It says, "You will never recover." It says, "Nothing will change." It says, "You are alone." Because the voice is loud, you believe it. Because the feeling is strong, you think it must be true. But Buddhist wisdom teaches that thoughts are passing formations. They arise, stay for a while, and pass away. They are not permanent. They are not always accurate. They are not the ruler of your life unless you hand them the crown. Resistance gives thoughts authority. Awareness gives thoughts space. When resistance appears, every thought feels urgent. Every fear demands action. Every memory feels like proof. Every prediction feels like destiny. But when awareness appears, you can say, "A fearful thought is here," not, "The future is ruined." You can say, "The mind is creating a painful story," not, "This story is the truth." This small shift is one of the beginning points of freedom. One difficult moment becomes 100 imagined battles because the mind wants certainty. It would rather suffer from a painful story than rest inside not knowing. This is very important to understand. Sometimes the mind creates battles because uncertainty feels unbearable. If someone has not replied, the mind invents a reason. If the future is unclear, the mind invents a disaster. If a person behaves differently, the mind invents rejection. It thinks a painful answer is better than no answer. But not knowing is not the same as danger. Silence is not always abandonment. Delay is not always failure. Change is not always loss. A hard season is not always the end of your peace. The mind suffers because it rushes to complete the story before reality has spoken fully. It closes the book in the middle of the chapter and then mourns the ending it invented. This is where patience becomes spiritual strength. Patience is not simply waiting. Patience is refusing to create extra suffering while life is still unfolding. It is the ability to remain present without forcing the future to reveal itself. It is the courage to say, "I do not know yet, and I do not need to punish myself with imagined pain while I wait." This kind of patience is not passive, it is disciplined. It protects your energy from being stolen by possibilities. Resistance also creates imagined battles by turning discomfort into identity. A moment of embarrassment becomes, "I am foolish." A moment of loneliness becomes, "Nobody wants me." A mistake becomes, "I always ruin things." A delay becomes, "Life is against me." The mind takes one event and uses it to define the whole self. This is one of the heaviest forms of suffering because the battle is no longer only against what happened. It becomes a battle against who you think you are. Buddhist wisdom gently loosens this false identity. It teaches that experiences arise and pass, but they are not the solid self. Anger arises, but you are not anger. Fear arises, but you are not fear. Shame arises, but you are not shame. A mistake happens, but you are not the mistake. A rejection happens, but you are not rejection. When the mind forgets this, one painful moment becomes 100 attacks against the self. When the mind remembers this, the moment returns to its proper size. The proper size of a moment is usually smaller than the mind makes it. This does not mean the moment is unimportant. It means the mind often adds meanings that are not actually present. Someone disagrees with you, and the moment becomes, "They do not respect me." Someone is busy, and the moment becomes, "I am not important." You make an error, and the moment becomes, "I am not capable." You feel sad, and the moment becomes, "I am broken." Resistance enlarges the pain by adding identity, permanence, and prediction. Awareness brings the moment back down to earth. It says, "Someone disagreed." It says, "Someone is busy." It says, "An error happened." It says, "Sadness is present." These statements may feel simple, but they are powerful because they remove the extra poison. They allow you to respond to what is actually happening instead of reacting to what the mind has imagined. A mind caught in resistance does not respond, it reacts. Reaction is fast, tense, and often blind. It sends messages too quickly. It says words that cannot be taken back. It assumes motives. It defends before listening. It attacks before understanding. It runs before checking if there is truly danger. This is how imagined battles become real problems. The mind creates a war, then behaves as if the war is real, and through that behavior, it may create the very pain it feared. Someone takes longer to respond, and resistance creates a story of rejection. Then you send an angry message. Now there is a real conflict. Someone gives feedback, and resistance creates a story of humiliation. Then you become defensive. Now the conversation becomes tense. Someone changes plans, and resistance creates a story of disrespect. Then you withdraw with resentment. Now distance grows. The first battle was imagined, but the reaction made it visible. This is why Buddhist practice places so much value on the pause. The pause is a small space with great power. Between the moment and the reaction, there is a doorway. In that doorway, you can breathe. You can feel the body. You can notice the story forming. You can ask, "What do I know for sure?" You can ask, "What am I adding?" You can ask, "What would wisdom do here?" The pause does not make you weak. It prevents you from becoming a servant to the first frightened thought. Many people think strength means reacting quickly, but often, quick reaction is just fear moving fast. True strength is the ability to stay present long enough to see clearly. It is the ability to feel the heat of a moment without throwing that heat onto someone else. It is the ability to let the first wave pass before you choose your next step. In Buddhist wisdom, this is not small. This is liberation in daily life. Resistance turns one moment into many battles because it cannot bear simplicity. Reality may be simple. This person said no, but resistance adds, they do not value me. I am always rejected. I should never ask for anything. People cannot be trusted. I will be alone. Reality may be simple. This plan failed. Resistance adds, my future is ruined. I wasted my time. I am behind everyone. Nothing works for me. Reality may be simple. I feel anxious. Resistance adds, something must be wrong with me. I cannot handle life. This feeling will never end. The mind does not do this to hurt you. It does it because it has learned to protect through overthinking. Somewhere along the way, it may have believed that if it could predict pain early enough, pain would hurt less. If it could analyze people deeply enough, betrayal would be avoided. If it could rehearse every outcome, failure would be prevented. But life cannot be fully controlled by mental rehearsal. The mind can think for years and still not guarantee safety. And while it tries, it drains the peace of the present. This is why overthinking is often resistance in disguise. It feels like problem solving, but many times it is just the refusal to feel uncertainty, sadness, disappointment, or fear directly. Instead of saying, I am afraid, the mind creates 50 scenarios. Instead of saying, I feel hurt, it analyzes every word. Instead of saying, I do not know what will happen, it tries to force an answer from the future. Overthinking keeps you busy, so you do not have to sit quietly with the raw feeling beneath it. Buddhist wisdom asks us to come back beneath the story. What is under the imagined battle? Often it is a simple wound. Fear of not being loved, fear of losing control, fear of being left, fear of being wrong, fear of being powerless, fear of not being enough. The imagined battles are branches. The root is usually a tender place asking for attention. When you only fight the branches, the tree keeps growing. When you gently touch the root, healing can begin. For example, when the mind creates 100 battles after someone criticizes you, the real pain may not be the criticism. It may be the old fear that you are not good enough. When the mind panics after someone becomes distant, the real pain may not be the distance. It may be the old fear of abandonment. When the mind becomes angry after life changes, the real pain may not be change itself. It may be the fear of losing the identity you built around what used to be. Seeing this does not make the pain disappear immediately, but it changes your relationship with it. You stop believing every battle is about the outside world. You begin to see that some battles are old wounds wearing new faces. This is not blame. This is understanding, and understanding creates compassion. When you understand your resistance, you no longer need to hate it. You can see it as a frightened guard standing at the gate of your heart. It is trying to protect you, but it is tired, tense, and often mistaken. You do not need to let it rule the kingdom. You also do not need to attack it. You can thank it for trying to protect you, then choose awareness instead. This is a gentle form of inner leadership. Resistance also feeds on memory. One difficult moment becomes 100 imagined battles because the mind does not meet it as new. It drags the past into it. A present tone of voice becomes every past insult. A present delay becomes every past disappointment. A present silence becomes every past abandonment. The mind says, "This is happening again," even when the present is not exactly the same. This is why mindfulness is so important. Mindfulness helps you see the present without covering it completely with the past. It asks, what is here now? Not, what does this remind me of? Not, how did this hurt me before? Not, how can I protect myself from every old wound? Just, what is here now? This question is like washing dust from a window. You may still remember the past, but you are not forced to see everything through it. The past can teach, but it should not always command. When past pain commands the present, every moment becomes a threat. You cannot receive kindness because you are waiting for betrayal. You cannot rest in peace because you are waiting for loss. You cannot hear feedback because you are waiting for humiliation. You cannot enjoy love because you are preparing for its ending. Resistance turns memory into a weapon and points it at the present. Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to erase memory. It asks you to stop obeying memory blindly. Memory may say, be careful. Awareness says, yes, but let us see clearly. Memory may say, this hurt before. Awareness says, yes, and this moment may still be different. Memory may say, protect yourself. Awareness says, protection does not have to mean panic. This is how the mind begins to heal its relationship with the past. Another way resistance multiplies pain is through inner argument. After a difficult moment, the mind may argue with the other person for hours, even when they are not present. It creates speeches. It wins debates. It proves points. It collects evidence. It imagines their response and then fights that too. By the end, nothing has changed outside, but inside, the body has lived through a long conflict. The strange thing is that the mind often believes these inner arguments bring relief. For a few seconds, they may feel powerful. You say the perfect words in your head. You finally defend yourself. You finally make them understand. But then the feeling returns because the imagined victory did not heal the real wound. It only kept attention tied to the conflict. This is why mental revenge does not bring peace. It feeds the fire while pretending to put it out. Buddhist teaching points toward release, not because the other person deserves to be excused, but because the mind deserves to be free. You can take wise action in the real world if action is needed. You can speak clearly, set boundaries, leave, repair, ask, or protect yourself. But endless inner fighting rarely creates wisdom. It keeps the conflict alive inside your own body. A helpful question is this thought leading me toward clarity or deeper agitation? Not every painful thought is useless. Some thoughts help you understand, choose, and act, but many thoughts only circle the wound. They do not open a path. They do not bring new insight. They only deepen the groove of suffering. When you notice this, you can step back. You can say, this is not reflection. This is resistance repeating itself. Reflection is calm enough to learn. Resistance is tense and repetitive. Reflection asks, what can I understand? Resistance asks, how can I keep fighting this? Reflection leads to a wise next step. Resistance leads to exhaustion. Reflection includes compassion. Resistance often includes blame, panic, or self-punishment. Learning this difference can save you from many unnecessary battles. There is also a future-making habit in resistance. The mind takes one difficulty and stretches it into forever. A bad day becomes, my life is falling apart. A season of confusion becomes, I will never find my way. A painful emotion becomes, I will always feel like this. This is how resistance makes temporary clouds look like a permanent sky. Buddhist wisdom teaches impermanence not as an idea, but as medicine. Every feeling changes. Every thought changes. Every condition changes. The pain you feel now is not a stone fixed in the center of your life. It is a wave moving through conditions. It may rise strongly. It may stay longer than you want, but it is still moving. Resistance says, this will never end. Awareness says, this is changing, even if slowly. When you remember impermanence, the imagined battles lose some power. You do not need to fight a feeling as if it has come to stay forever. You do not need to panic because the mind is cloudy today. You do not need to build a whole future out of one difficult hour. You can say, "This is a passing state," not to dismiss it, but to hold it wisely. A passing state can be painful, but it does not need to become your identity. One of the most practical ways to stop multiplying battles is to separate fact from story. Fact is what can be clearly observed. Story is what the mind adds. Fact: they have not replied. Story: they do not care. Fact: the plan changed. Story: nothing ever works for me. Fact: I feel nervous. Story: I cannot handle this. Fact: someone disagreed. Story: they are against me. This practice brings the mind back to reality. It does not deny emotion. It simply refuses to confuse emotion with proof. When you separate fact from story, you may still feel discomfort, but the discomfort becomes workable. You can respond to a fact. You cannot wisely respond to 100 imagined stories. If someone has not replied, you can wait, ask later, or move on with your day. If you believe they have rejected you, abandoned you, disrespected you, and proven your deepest fear, you may react from pain that reality has not confirmed. This is why clarity protects peace. Another practice is to return to the body before responding. Resistance lives in the body as tightness, heat, pressure, restlessness, or heaviness. When you notice these sensations, you are no longer completely lost in the story. You can place attention on the breath. You can relax the shoulders. You can unclench the hands. You can feel the feet on the ground. This may seem simple, but it interrupts the multiplication of suffering. It brings energy out of imagined battles and back into direct experience. The body is always in the present. The mind can travel to 10 years ago and 10 years from now, but the body remains here. When you return to the body with kindness, you return to the only place where peace can begin. You stop living in the argument and begin living in the breath. You stop fighting shadows and begin feeling what is real. Often, beneath the story, there is just a tight chest asking to soften, a tired heart asking to be held, a frightened mind asking for gentleness. Resistance also multiplies battles through comparison. One difficult moment happens, and the mind says, "Other people do not go through this. Everyone else is ahead. Why is my life harder? Why can they be happy while I struggle?" Now the moment is no longer only painful, it becomes proof of separation. Comparison adds shame to pain. It makes suffering feel personal and lonely. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that suffering is part of the shared human condition. Everyone faces uncertainty. Everyone loses control. Everyone meets disappointment. Everyone carries something unseen. Some people hide it well. Some people speak of it. Some people turn it into kindness. Some people turn it into bitterness. But no one escapes the changing nature of life. When you remember this, your pain becomes less isolating. You stop believing that difficulty means you have been left behind by existence. This does not make your pain small. It makes your heart larger. You begin to meet yourself and others with more compassion. Instead of saying, "Why me?" you may begin to say, "This too is part of being human." There is softness in that sentence. It does not answer every question, but it removes the sharp edge of isolation. It reminds you that you are not broken for struggling. You are human, learning how to stop turning struggle into war. Another hidden battle resistance creates is the battle against your own emotions. A difficult moment happens, and sadness appears. Then resistance says, "I should not feel sad." Fear appears, and resistance says, "I should be stronger." Anger appears, and resistance says, "I should be more spiritual." Now you are not only dealing with sadness, fear, or anger. You are also fighting yourself for being human. Buddhist practice does not ask you to become emotionless. It asks you to become intimate with your emotions without being controlled by them. Sadness can be known, fear can be known, anger can be known, shame can be known. When an emotion is known clearly, it becomes part of the field of awareness. When it is resisted, it becomes an enemy, and what you make into an enemy often grows stronger. A feeling that is allowed to move may pass through like weather. A feeling that is resisted may return like a messenger you refuse to hear. This is why emotional acceptance is not indulgence. It is wisdom. It does not mean you act out every feeling. It means you stop denying that the feeling is present. You can feel anger and choose not to harm. You can feel fear and choose not to run. You can feel sadness and choose not to collapse. This is freedom. Resistance creates many battles because it confuses acceptance with defeat. It says, if I accept this, I am letting it win. But acceptance does not mean the painful thing wins. Acceptance means confusion stops winning. Denial stops winning. Panic stops winning. The story stops winning. When you accept what is here, you're finally able to meet it with your full intelligence. You stop wasting strength on wishing it away and begin using strength to move wisely. A person who accepts one difficult moment does not become powerless. They become available to see, available to learn, available to act, available to rest, available to heal. Resistance makes you unavailable because all your energy goes into fighting the fact that the moment exists. Acceptance returns energy to your hands. This is especially important when dealing with people. A person says something hurtful. Resistance may create 100 battles about their intention, your worth, the future of the relationship, and every similar wound from the past. Acceptance begins more simply. Those words hurt. From there you can ask, do I need to speak? Do I need space? Do I need a boundary? Do I need to let this pass? Do I need to look at why this touched me so deeply? This is wise response. It does not deny pain. It prevents pain from becoming chaos. When resistance is strong, the mind wants immediate relief. It wants to fix, force, confront, escape, prove, or control. But not every moment needs immediate movement. Some moments need stillness first. Stillness allows wisdom to gather. Without stillness, you may mistake urgency for truth. You may act from fear and later call it instinct. You may speak from pain and later call it honesty. Stillness helps you tell the difference. There is a reason many Buddhist teachings return again and again to breath, awareness, patience, and right understanding. These are not abstract ideas. They are tools for daily suffering. When the mind begins creating 100 battles, the breath brings it back to one moment. Awareness shows what is real and what is added. Patience protects you from reacting too soon. Right understanding reminds you that all things are changing, thoughts are not commands, and peace begins where resistance ends. The more you practice, the sooner you notice the multiplication. At first, you may realize it after hours of overthinking. Later, after minutes. Then, sometimes, after the first few thoughts. You may hear the mind begin to say, "What if this means?" And you gently return. You may feel the body tighten and pause. You may notice the story forming and smile softly, not because the pain is funny, but because you recognize the old pattern. Recognition is the beginning of freedom. This is not about becoming perfect. The mind will still create battles. It has practiced for years. Be patient with it. Every time you return to the present, you are weakening an old habit. Every time you separate fact from story, you are training clarity. Every time you feel an emotion without attacking it, you are teaching the heart safety. Every time you pause before reacting, you are choosing freedom over repetition. One difficult moment does not need to become 100 imagined battles. A delayed answer can remain a delayed answer. A hard conversation can remain a hard conversation. A mistake can remain a mistake. A sad day can remain a sad day. A changing season can remain a changing season. The mind does not have to turn everything into a prophecy, a punishment, or a verdict on your life. The Buddhist path helps you return things to their true size. It teaches you to meet the moment without dragging the whole past and future into it. It teaches you to let pain be pain without making it a war. It teaches you to notice the stories without becoming their prisoner. It teaches you to breathe before the mind builds another battlefield. And slowly, what once controlled you begins to loosen. The next time one difficult moment arrives, watch what happens inside. Watch the first tightening. Watch the first story. Watch the first prediction. Watch the mind reach for old evidence. Watch it prepare for battles that are not here. Do not hate it. Do not obey it blindly. Just see it. Seeing is already a form of freedom. Then come back to the simplest truth. This is one moment. This is one breath. This is one feeling. This is one event. I do not need to turn it into 100 battles. I do not need to suffer every possible future before it arrives. I do not need to relive every past wound to protect myself now. I can meet this moment as it is. I can respond when response is needed. I can wait when waiting is wise. I can release what the mind has added. And when you do this, something quiet begins to change. The world may still bring difficult moments, but your mind no longer has to multiply them. Pain may still knock, but resistance does not have to invite an army behind it. Life may still feel uncertain, but uncertainty does not have to become a battlefield. You begin to discover that peace is not found by winning every imagined war. Peace is found by no longer entering wars that were never real. This is how the heart becomes lighter. Not because life becomes perfectly easy, but because the mind stops making it heavier than it has to be. Not because every problem disappears, but because every problem no longer becomes 100 shadows. Not because you control every outcome, but because you no longer let fear create outcomes before reality has spoken. And from that place, the path opens again. You begin to see that resistance does not only multiply pain, it also pulls you away from honesty. It makes the mind argue with life instead of meeting life directly. And this prepares us for the next truth. The mind suffers more from arguing with reality than from meeting it honestly. And once you see how resistance turns one moment into 100 imagined battles, another truth becomes clear. The mind does not only suffer because life is difficult, it suffers because it keeps arguing with life after life has already spoken. It stands before reality like a person standing before a closed gate, shouting, begging, blaming, bargaining, and replaying every reason the gate should still be open. But the gate is closed, and the more the mind argues with it, the more tired the heart becomes. There is a pain that comes from meeting reality, and there is a deeper pain that comes from refusing to meet it. The first pain may be sharp, but it is clean. It belongs to the moment. The second pain is heavy, confusing, and endless because it is created by the mind's argument. Reality says, "This happened." The mind says, "No, it should not have happened." Reality says, "This person chose differently." The mind says, "They should have chosen me." Reality says, "This season has changed." The mind says, "It should have stayed the same." And with every argument, peace moves farther away. Buddhist wisdom teaches that suffering grows when the mind refuses direct contact with truth. Truth may hurt, but it also clears the ground. A painful truth shows you where you are. A false argument keeps you lost. When you meet reality honestly, you may cry, you may grieve, you may feel shaken, but at least you are facing the real thing. When you argue with reality, you are not healing. You are wrestling with a version of life that does not exist anymore. This is why the mind becomes so exhausted. It is not only carrying what happened, it is carrying what should have happened, what could have happened, what might have happened, and what would have happened if people had behaved differently, if timing had been kinder, if life had followed the picture you were holding. That is too much for one heart to carry. Reality is one stone. Argument turns it into a mountain. The honest meeting of reality begins with a simple but powerful sentence. This is what is here, not I like this, not this is fair, not this does not hurt, just this is what is here. That sentence may not feel comforting at first because the ego wants comfort through control, but the heart finds real comfort through truth. A lie can soothe you for a moment, but truth is the only place where healing can stand. When the mind argues with reality, it often believes it is protecting hope. It thinks, if I accept this, then I am giving up. But there is a difference between hope and denial. Hope gives you strength to walk forward. Denial keeps you staring at a door that is no longer opening. Hope says, even here something wise can grow. Denial says, I cannot move until this becomes what I wanted. One gives energy, the other drains it. Many people stay trapped because they confuse honesty with defeat. They think admitting the truth means the pain has won. But in Buddhist teaching, seeing clearly is never defeat. Seeing clearly is the beginning of freedom. You cannot release what you refuse to see. You cannot leave a burning room while pretending there is no fire. You cannot stop drinking poison while calling it medicine. Honesty may sting, but it gives you your life back. The mind argues with reality through questions that have no end. Why did this happen? Why did they do that? Why me? Why now? Why did life allow this? Some questions can lead to wisdom, but many questions become circles. They do not open a path. They keep the wound active. They make the mind believe that if it can find the perfect answer, then pain will finally obey. But some pain will not explain itself in a way that satisfies the heart. Some people will never give the apology you deserve. Some endings will never become neat. Some losses will never feel logical. If peace depends on a perfect explanation, peace will always be delayed. Buddhist wisdom does not tell you to stop asking questions because questions are wrong. It teaches you to notice whether a question is leading to awakening or deeper bondage. A wise question opens the mind. A resistant question tightens it. A wise question asks, what can this teach me about attachment, compassion, patience, or freedom? A resistant question asks the past to change its answer. A wise question brings you closer to reality. A resistant question keeps you arguing with what cannot be undone. Meeting reality honestly does not mean you stop caring about justice, change, or protection. It means you begin from truth instead of fantasy. If someone has hurt you, honesty says, this action caused harm. From there, you can create distance, speak clearly, protect your peace, or choose a new path. But argument says, they should not be this way. They must understand. They must become the person I wanted them to be. That argument can keep you tied to someone long after your body has walked away. This is one of the most painful ways people suffer. They are not only hurt by what someone did, they are hurt by the mind's refusal to accept who that person has shown themselves to be. The heart keeps saying, but they could have been different. Maybe they could have. Maybe they should have. But honest seeing asks, what are they showing me now? Buddhism brings us back from possibility to reality, from fantasy to observation, from clinging to clarity. The mind suffers deeply when it loves a version of life that reality no longer supports. It may love the old version of a relationship, the old version of the body, the old version of a dream, the old version of a person, or the old version of itself. There is tenderness in this. It is not foolish to mourn what changed. But suffering grows when mourning becomes argument. Grief says, I miss what was. Resistance says, what was should still be here. Grief can move through the heart. Resistance freezes the heart in yesterday. To meet reality honestly, you must allow grief without turning it into a lawsuit against life. This is difficult because the mind wants someone to blame. Blame gives the ego a place to put the pain. It says, if this person had not done this, if life had not been unfair, if I had not made that choice, I would be free. Sometimes blame contains part of the truth. People do cause harm. Circumstances can be unfair. Choices do have consequences. But blame alone does not heal. It can identify a cause, but it cannot walk the path for you. Buddhist wisdom invites responsibility without self-hatred and clarity without bitterness. Responsibility says, this part is mine to understand. Self-hatred says, I am the problem. Clarity says, this person's actions were harmful. Bitterness says, I will keep drinking anger until they suffer too. Responsibility frees energy. Self-hatred traps it. Clarity protects the heart. Bitterness burns it from the inside. Meeting reality honestly means knowing the difference. The mind argues with reality because it wants life to be controlled by preference. It says, I wanted this, so this should remain. I feared that, so that should not come. I loved this, so it should not leave. I worked for this, so it should succeed. But life is not built from preference alone. It is built from causes and conditions. Seeds grow when conditions support them. Relationships survive when both people nourish them. Bodies change because they are living processes. Plans fail because life contains more moving parts than the mind can command. This understanding can feel humbling, but it is not meant to crush you. It is meant to remove the burden of trying to control everything. When you see causes and conditions, you stop taking every outcome as a personal insult. You begin to understand that many things arise from layers of history, habit, choice, timing, environment, and change. This does not remove pain, but it removes the extra suffering that says, life is attacking me. Arguing with reality makes everything personal. A delay becomes disrespect. A rejection becomes proof of unworthiness. A mistake becomes evidence of failure. A loss becomes punishment. A change becomes betrayal. The mind places itself at the center of every event and asks, what does this say about me? Meeting reality honestly asks a cleaner question. What is actually happening? This question brings humility. It reminds you that not every event is a message about your worth. Sometimes a door closes because it was not stable. Sometimes a person leaves because of their own confusion. Sometimes a plan fails because conditions were not ready. Sometimes pain arrives because life is impermanent, not because you are cursed. One reason honesty brings relief is that it ends the performance. When the mind argues with reality, it often tries to look stronger than it feels. It says, I am fine, while the heart is tired. It says, it does not matter, while the body is tense. It says, I have moved on, while memory still controls the night. This inner pretending creates loneliness. You become divided against yourself. One part feels pain, another part denies it, and another part judges the pain for existing. No wonder the mind becomes heavy. Honesty reunites you with yourself. It allows you to say, this hurts. I'm disappointed. I'm afraid. I wanted something different. I do not know what comes next. These sentences may look simple, but they are healing because they end the inner split. You no longer need to waste energy pretending not to feel what you feel. You can finally bring compassion to the place that has been hidden. In Buddhist practice, honest awareness is not dramatic. It is quiet and direct. You sit with what is present. You notice the breath. You notice the feeling. You notice the thought. You notice the body's reaction. You do not need to decorate it. You do not need to fight it. You do not need to build a story around it. You simply know it. This knowing is powerful because what is known clearly is less likely to control you blindly. A person who does not know their anger may become anger. A person who knows anger is here has space. A person who does not know their fear may obey every fearful thought. A person who knows fear is here can breathe before choosing. A person who does not know their grief may become trapped in numbness or bitterness. A person who knows grief is here can begin to care for the wound. Honest meeting gives you space between awareness and reaction. Arguing with reality removes that space. It makes the mind rush. It says, fix this now, change this now, make this feeling stop now, make them understand now, make the future safe now. This urgency may feel powerful, but it often leads to confusion. You may speak before wisdom arrives. You may choose before your heart settles. You may chase what needs to leave. You may hold what needs to be released. You may call fear intuition and resistance strength. This is why stillness matters. Stillness does not mean doing nothing forever. It means not letting panic be the leader. It means giving the mind enough quiet to see what is real. When you sit with reality honestly, the first feeling may be uncomfortable, but beneath that discomfort, clarity begins to form. You may see that you need to apologize. You may see that you need to walk away. You may see that you are grieving a fantasy, not a truth. You may see that what you called love was actually attachment. You may see that what you called strength was actually fear trying not to be touched. These realizations can hurt, but they are clean pain. Clean pain leads somewhere. It cuts through illusion. It brings the heart closer to freedom. Dirty pain, the pain of arguing with reality, leads in circles. It repeats, defends, accuses, denies, compares, and delays. Clean pain says, this is true, and now I can respond. Dirty pain says, this cannot be true, and I will keep suffering until it changes. Buddhist teachings often point to the nature of clinging. Clinging is the hand that refuses to open. It holds tightly to pleasure, identity, expectation, memory, opinion, and control. When reality shifts, the closed hand hurts. The tighter the grip, the deeper the pain. The mind then blames reality for the pain, not noticing that some of the pain comes from the grip. Meeting reality honestly is the slow opening of the hand. This does not happen in one moment for most people. The mind has practiced arguing for years. It has argued with childhood, with rejection, with aging, with unfairness, with mistakes, with people's choices, with its own emotions. So be patient. Each time you notice the argument, you are already waking up. Each time you say, this is the argument, instead of becoming lost in it, freedom has begun. A useful practice is to listen for the word should in your suffering. They should have known. This should be easier. I should be further ahead. My family should understand. My body should not change. The past should not still affect me. Some of these statements may contain understandable pain, but they also reveal the place where the mind is fighting reality. When you hear should, pause gently. Ask, what is actually here? Then ask, what is the kindest and wisest response to what is here? This brings the mind back from demand to action. Demand says, reality must change before I can be peaceful. Action says, given what is true, what can I do with wisdom? Demand drains power. Action restores it. Demand keeps you staring at what is missing. Action helps you care for what is possible. Demand argues with the locked door. Action looks for the next step. Another way the mind argues with reality is by refusing limits. It wants endless energy, endless youth, endless certainty, endless approval, endless time, endless chances. But human life has limits. The body needs rest. Time moves. People have their own minds. Some chances pass, some paths close, some answers do not arrive. The ego sees limits as insults. Wisdom sees limits as part of truth. When you meet limits honestly, life becomes simpler. You stop promising what your body cannot carry. You stop chasing people who do not meet you with care. You stop forcing seasons that have ended. You stop pretending you have endless time to live truthfully. Limits can make the heart sad, but they also make life more real. They help you choose what matters. The mind suffers when it tries to live in a life without limits. It says yes when the body says no. It clings when love has become harmful. It waits for people who keep showing absence. It keeps reopening wounds because it wants a different ending. It spends years trying to become someone it does not truly want to be, only to win approval from people who are never satisfied. This is not peace. This is argument disguised as ambition, loyalty, patience, or hope. Honest meeting asks for courage. It asks, what am I refusing to see? This question is not easy, but it is liberating. You may be refusing to see that a relationship is one-sided. You may be refusing to see that a dream needs a new form. You may be refusing to see that you are tired. You may be refusing to see that your anger is grief. You may be refusing to see that the apology may never come. You may be refusing to see that you have outgrown a version of yourself. The truth may ache, but it gives direction. Without honesty, the mind keeps asking for peace while protecting the very illusion that blocks peace. It wants calm, but it keeps feeding false hope. It wants healing, but it keeps reopening the old story. It wants confidence, but it keeps depending on approval. It wants freedom, but it keeps clinging to what has already shown itself to be unstable. This is why arguing with reality is so painful. It asks for relief while refusing the doorway to relief. The doorway is always truth, not harsh truth used as a weapon, not cold truth without compassion, but clear truth held gently. Buddhist wisdom is not cruel. It does not say, accept reality and stop feeling. It says, come close to what is real, because only there can your suffering begin to unwind. Truth without compassion can become violence. Compassion without truth can become avoidance. The path needs both. When you combine truth and compassion, healing becomes possible. Truth says, this happened. Compassion says, and it hurt. Truth says, this person may not change. Compassion says, and it is understandable that you wished they would. Truth says, this season is over. Compassion says, and grieving it is allowed. Truth says, you made a mistake. Compassion says, and you can learn without destroying yourself. This balance is deeply Buddhist. It helps the heart stay open without staying blind. Arguing with reality often creates resentment because the mind keeps measuring life against the picture it wanted. By now, I should be happier. By now, I should be healed. By now, they should have understood. By now, things should be easier. But healing does not follow the ego's calendar. People do not awaken because we demand it. Life does not unfold according to private deadlines. When the mind clings to timelines, it turns growth into punishment. Meeting reality honestly means respecting the pace of things. Some wounds need time. Some lessons repeat until they are fully seen. Some changes grow slowly beneath the surface before anything visible appears. A seed does not become a tree because you shout at the soil. The soil needs water, light, and patience. In the same way, the heart needs awareness, compassion, and steady practice. Arguing with the pace only adds pressure to pain. There is also a deep peace in admitting, I do not know. The mind hates this because it wants firm ground. It wants to predict, define, and secure. But much of life is uncertain. The argument with uncertainty can become more painful than uncertainty itself. The mind says, I must know what will happen before I can rest. Reality says, you cannot know yet. Then suffering begins. Not because the future is attacking you, but because the mind refuses to live without guarantees. Buddhist wisdom does not give false guarantees. It gives presence. It teaches you to stand inside uncertainty without letting uncertainty become a monster. I do not know can become a sentence of humility instead of terror. It can mean, the future is not here yet. It can mean, I will meet what comes when it comes. It can mean, I can take the next wise step without seeing the whole road. This is how honesty softens fear. When the mind stops arguing, it does not become empty. It becomes available to reality. You begin to notice what is still good without forcing yourself to be positive. You begin to feel small moments of peace between waves of pain. You begin to hear your own needs more clearly. You begin to see people as they are, not only as you hoped they would be. You begin to make choices from dignity instead of desperation. Life may still be difficult, but it becomes less confusing. Confusion often comes from arguing with what is obvious. When someone repeatedly shows you carelessness, but the mind keeps saying, maybe they care deeply, confusion grows. When your body keeps showing exhaustion, but the mind keeps saying, I should push harder, confusion grows. When a path keeps closing, but the mind keeps saying, it must open the way I planned, confusion grows. Honesty may be painful, but it is rarely as confusing as denial. This is why reality, even when hard, can be merciful. It removes illusion. It shows you what needs attention. It reveals where attachment has become suffering. It exposes where you are giving your power away. It tells you when to stop waiting, when to speak, when to rest, when to grieve, when to begin again. Reality is not always gentle in how it teaches, but it is more trustworthy than fantasy. The mind suffers more from arguing with reality because argument keeps it divided. One part knows the truth, another part refuses it. One part wants to move forward, another part keeps bargaining with the past. One part feels the pain, another part judges the pain. This division drains energy. Honesty gathers the scattered parts back together. It says, let us stop running, let us face this. And even if tears come, there is relief in no longer pretending. You may have felt this before. The moment you finally admitted something to yourself, it hurt, but it also brought a strange calm. Maybe you admitted that you were tired. Maybe you admitted that someone was not treating you well. Maybe you admitted that you were afraid. Maybe you admitted that a chapter was over. The truth did not remove all pain, but it stopped the inner argument. It gave the heart a place to stand. That is the gift of meeting reality honestly. It gives the heart a place to stand. Arguing gives no ground. It keeps moving, spinning, replaying, denying, hoping, fearing. Honesty places both feet on the earth. This is where I am. From there you can breathe. From there you can choose. From there you can heal. From there you can walk. Buddhist wisdom teaches that liberation begins with seeing things as they are, not as fear says they are, not as desire wants them to be, not as memory paints them, not as ego demands them, but as they are. This clear seeing is not cold. It is deeply compassionate because it ends unnecessary suffering. It stops the mind from creating extra wounds through argument. It brings life back to the present, where wise action is possible. So when reality brings something difficult, watch the mind carefully. Watch how quickly it begins to argue. Watch the should, watch the blame, watch the bargaining, watch the demand for a different past. Watch the fear of a future that has not arrived. Do not attack the mind for this. It is doing what it learned to do. but do not let it drag you into endless courtrooms and battles. Pause, breathe, return to the truth. Say quietly, "This is what is here." Then soften, "This hurts." Then steady yourself. What is the wise response? These three movements can change the whole experience. Truth, compassion, wisdom. This is how the argument begins to end. Reality may still be painful, but pain met honestly can become a teacher. Pain argued with becomes a prison. The difference is not always in what happens outside you. The difference is in how tightly the mind fights what it already knows. When you stop arguing, you do not lose power. You stop wasting it. You begin to use your strength where it can actually help. And as this becomes clear, the next doorway opens. Because beneath every argument with reality, there is often a hidden demand. The demand that this present moment should be different before the heart is willing to rest. That hidden demand is subtle, but it keeps many people trapped. And to understand suffering more deeply, we must now look at how the demand for a different present quietly keeps the heart locked inside its own resistance. And once you understand that the mind suffers more from arguing with reality than from meeting it honestly, you begin to notice something even quieter beneath the argument. There is a hidden demand inside the heart. It does not always speak loudly. It does not always sound like anger. Sometimes it sounds like sadness, pressure, impatience, or disappointment. But beneath it, the message is the same. This present moment is not enough. It must be different before I can be at peace. That hidden demand is one of the deepest traps of suffering. The heart does not always feel trapped because life is unbearable. Sometimes it feels trapped because the mind keeps refusing the life that is actually here. It keeps waiting for another version of this moment, a cleaner version, a softer version, a more pleasing version, a version where people understand you, the past makes sense, the future is certain, the body feels strong, the emotions behave, and everything looks closer to what you hoped for. But this moment is the only place where life can be touched. This breath, this body, this feeling, this unfinished day, this ordinary room, this uncertain season. This is where your life is happening. And when the mind keeps demanding a different present, it abandons the only place where peace can begin. There is a deep sadness in this because many people spend years waiting for life to become acceptable before they allow themselves to live. They tell themselves, "I will rest when things are fixed. I will be happy when I finally get there. I will forgive myself when I understand everything. I will breathe when this pain disappears. I will feel whole when someone chooses me, apologizes to me, returns to me, or proves that I mattered." And while they wait, life quietly continues. The sun rises, the body ages, small blessings appear and disappear, people come and go, opportunities pass. A simple cup of tea grows cold, a kind word is missed. A quiet evening is wasted in mental tension, not because nothing good was present, but because the mind was busy demanding a different present. Buddhist wisdom asks us to see this clearly. The present moment is often rejected not because it is completely empty, but because it does not match desire. Desire says, "This is not the moment I ordered." The mind looks at what is here, compares it to what it wanted, and then declares the present wrong. This comparison becomes suffering. The heart is not only feeling what is here, it is grieving the difference between what is here and what it wished would be here. This is why a person can have enough to survive, yet still feel poor inside. They may have shelter, food, breath, time, and people who care, but the mind is fixed on the one thing missing. It says, "Until that arrives, this moment has no value." Another person may be loved by many, but if the one person they want does not respond, the whole present becomes dark. Another person may have made progress, but because they are not where they planned to be, progress feels like failure. The hidden demand for a different present blinds the heart to the life already unfolding. This does not mean you should pretend your needs do not matter. It does not mean you should silence your longing. It does not mean you should accept harmful situations without wise action. Buddhist teaching is not asking you to become numb or passive. It is asking you to stop making your peace depend completely on conditions becoming perfect. It is asking you to stop treating the present as worthless simply because it is incomplete. Because every present moment is incomplete in some way. Something is always unfinished. Something is always uncertain. Something is always changing. Someone will not understand you fully. The body will not always feel comfortable. The future will not give all its answers. The past will not always feel settled. There will always be one more thing the mind can point to and say, "Not yet. You cannot rest yet." If you obey that voice forever, rest will always be delayed. This is how the heart becomes trapped, not by iron bars, but by conditions. I can only be okay if this happens. I can only be peaceful if that person changes. I can only feel free if the past explains itself. I can only enjoy today if tomorrow is guaranteed. These conditions become invisible walls. The heart waits inside them, believing freedom is outside, not realizing the walls were built by attachment. Attachment is not the same as love. Love can hold life gently. Attachment grips and says, "You must be this way for me to be okay." Love sees what is here. Attachment keeps demanding what is absent. Love can grieve and still stay open. Attachment makes grief become possession. Love allows the present to breathe. Attachment tightens around the present and says, "Change first, then I will accept you." The hidden demand for a different present is often attachment wearing ordinary clothing. It may look like ambition. It may look like high standards. It may look like loyalty. It may look like hope. It may even look like spiritual growth. But underneath, if the mind is saying, "I cannot be here unless here becomes different," suffering is already growing. Buddhist wisdom does not destroy desire by force. It brings awareness to desire. It helps you ask, is this desire serving life, or is it holding my heart hostage? Some desires are wholesome: the desire to heal, the desire to grow, the desire to protect yourself, the desire to help others, the desire to live with dignity. But even wholesome desires can become suffering when they turn into demands. A desire says, "May this happen." A demand says, "This must happen before I can be whole." That difference matters. You can desire healing without hating the wounded part of you. You can desire improvement without despising where you are. You can desire love without abandoning yourself in its absence. You can desire a better future without rejecting today as useless. The suffering begins when desire becomes the judge of the present moment. Many people are not actually living in the present. They are living in negotiation with it. They say, "I will give you my attention if you give me comfort. I will give you gratitude if you give me what I asked for. I will give you peace if you remove uncertainty. I will give you patience if you hurry up." But the present moment cannot be negotiated with in that way. It is already here. It does not become more real because you approve of it, and it does not disappear because you reject it. When the heart demands a different present, it loses contact with what is available. This is why people can miss support while waiting for one specific person to support them. They can miss small progress while waiting for a large breakthrough. They can miss moments of calm while waiting for permanent happiness. They can miss the lesson inside difficulty while waiting only for difficulty to end. The mind becomes fixed on one doorway and ignores every window that is open. This is a painful way to live, because life rarely arrives exactly through the doorway we choose. Sometimes help comes in a form we did not expect. Sometimes healing begins in silence, not explanation. Sometimes freedom comes through release, not repair. Sometimes the lesson comes through losing control, not gaining it. But when the mind demands a different present, it cannot recognize gifts that do not match its preferred shape. The heart becomes trapped because it keeps measuring now against then, here against there, what is against what should be. It says, "My life would be better if I were back there," or "My life will only begin when I get there." It moves between memory and expectation, but rarely settles into direct experience. The result is that the present becomes a waiting room. Life becomes something that will happen later. But Buddhist wisdom gently reminds us that later is not a place you can live. When later arrives, it will arrive as now. If the mind has not learned how to meet now, it will not know how to meet later either. It will simply create a new demand. When you finally get what you wanted, the mind may say, "Good, but what if I lose it?" When one problem ends, it may say, "What about the next one?" When one goal is reached, it may say, "This is not enough." A mind trained in dissatisfaction will carry dissatisfaction into every new condition. This is why peace must be practiced here, not postponed until life becomes perfect. The present moment is not always pleasant, but it is always the training ground. If you can bring awareness to a difficult breath, you are practicing freedom. If you can soften around one uncomfortable feeling, you are practicing freedom. If you can notice one thought without following it, you are practicing freedom. If you can be kind to yourself in an unfinished season, you are practicing freedom. The hidden demand for a different present often becomes strongest when the heart feels vulnerable. When you are tired, you want life to be easier immediately. When you are lonely, you want someone to appear and remove the ache. When you are confused, you want a clear sign. When you are grieving, you want the past restored. These longings are human. Buddhist wisdom does not shame them. It simply asks you to hold them with awareness, so they do not become chains. A longing can be held gently. You can say, "I wish this were different." That is honest, but suffering deepens when the wish becomes, "This must be different," or "I cannot live peacefully." One sentence breathes, the other tightens. One gives space to pain, the other turns pain into captivity. One honors the heart, the other imprisons it. There is great tenderness in admitting, "I wanted another present." Many people never admit this clearly. They only feel anger, jealousy, resentment, anxiety, or numbness. But beneath those feelings, there is often a quiet grief. The grief of wanting a different family, a different body, a different past, a different outcome, a different level of support, a different mind, a different life by now. When that grief is not recognized, it becomes resistance. Recognized grief can soften. Unrecognized grief becomes demand. This is why the Buddhist path values honest observation. Sit quietly with the feeling and ask, "What am I asking this moment to be?" You may discover that you are asking it to be painless. You may be asking it to be certain. You may be asking it to prove your worth. You may be asking it to undo the past. You may be asking it to make someone else change. You may be asking it to give you a version of life that no moment can fully give. When you see the demand clearly, it begins to loosen. Seeing is not the same as forcing. You do not need to violently remove the demand. You only need to notice it with wisdom. The demand has survived in darkness. Awareness brings it into light. And when it is seen, you can begin to ask a kinder question. Can I meet this moment without requiring it to be perfect? Not forever, not for the whole day. Just this breath, just this minute, just this small piece of life. That question is powerful because it lowers the wall between you and now. The mind may still prefer something else, but preference no longer has to become prison. You may prefer comfort, but you can still breathe inside discomfort. You may prefer clarity, but you can still act with patience inside uncertainty. You may prefer repair, but you can still care for yourself without it. You may prefer a different past, but you can still stop abandoning the present. This is the quiet strength of acceptance. Acceptance allows you to live while life is still unfinished. It lets you stop waiting for everything to be healed before you treat yourself gently. It lets you stop waiting for every answer before you take the next step. It lets you stop waiting for everyone to understand you before you understand yourself. It lets you stop waiting for the pain to vanish before you breathe with kindness. Many people think acceptance means lowering their standards for life. But acceptance is not lowering your standards. It is lowering your resistance to truth. You can accept the present and still plant seeds for a better future. In fact, you plant better seeds when you are not fighting the soil. A gardener does not scream at the ground because the tree is not yet grown. The gardener studies the soil, waters carefully, removes weeds, and waits with patience. Acceptance is like that. It works with reality instead of attacking it. When you demand a different present, action becomes tense. You act from panic, comparison, and rejection. You try to fix yourself because you hate where you are. You chase people because you cannot bear their distance. You push your body because you cannot accept its limits. You rush healing because you are ashamed of still hurting. This kind of action may look productive, but it often creates more suffering because it comes from inner violence. When you accept the present, action becomes cleaner. You can still change what needs changing, but without making an enemy of where you stand. You can still improve, but without insulting your current self. You can still leave what harms you, but without carrying hatred as your fuel. You can still seek support, but without believing you are nothing until someone comes. This is wise effort. It is effort without self-rejection. The hidden demand for a different present also traps the heart in comparison with an ideal self. The mind says, I should be calmer, I should be wiser, I should be healed, I should not still react this way, I should not still care, I should not still feel pain. This becomes spiritual resistance. Instead of resisting life outside, you resist the inner life. You make your own emotions unacceptable. You turn growth into a weapon against yourself. Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to become a perfect statue of peace. It asks you to know what is present. If anger is present, know anger. If confusion is present, know confusion. If craving is present, know craving. If sadness is present, know sadness. The practice is not to pretend the mind is already free. The practice is to meet the not free places with awareness, patience, and compassion. That is how freedom grows. A seed does not become a flower by hating itself for being a seed. A wounded heart does not heal by hating itself for being wounded. A restless mind does not become peaceful by being attacked. Everything grows through right conditions. Awareness is a right condition. Gentleness is a right condition. Discipline is a right condition. Patience is a right condition. Shame is not a right condition for peace. Self-hatred is not a right condition for awakening. When the heart demands a different present, it often misses the teaching inside the present one. Every moment carries information. Not always pleasant information, but useful information. Restlessness may show you where you are attached. Anger may show you where a boundary is needed. Jealousy may show you where you feel unseen. Fatigue may show you where you are living beyond your capacity. Sadness may show you what mattered. Disappointment may show you where expectation was too tightly held. If you reject the moment too quickly, you miss what it came to reveal. This does not mean everything happens to teach you a neat lesson. Some things are simply painful. But even pain can reveal your relationship with life. It can show where the mind grasps, where it fears, where it clings, where it avoids. where it still waits for permission to be at peace. The present moment becomes a teacher when you stop treating it only as an obstacle. A difficult present may be asking for honesty. It may be asking you to slow down. It may be asking you to stop chasing what does not meet you. It may be asking you to care for the body. It may be asking you to release an old identity. It may be asking you to stop confusing control with safety. But if the mind only says, "This should be different," it cannot hear the question life is asking. This is one reason meditation can feel difficult at first. When you sit still, you meet the present without the usual distractions. The mind begins to show its demands. It says, "This is boring. This should feel peaceful. My thoughts should stop. I should be better at this." Even in the practice of peace, resistance appears, but that is not failure. That is the teaching becoming visible. You begin to see how quickly the mind rejects what is here. Meditation trains the heart to remain, not to force silence, but to stop running from what is present. Breath by breath, you learn that a restless moment can be known. An uncomfortable feeling can be held. A thought can arise without being obeyed. A sound can pass. An itch can be noticed. A memory can appear and fade. Slowly, the present becomes less threatening because you are no longer demanding that it become pleasant before you stay with it. This is a deep form of freedom. To stay without clinging, to feel without drowning, to want without being enslaved, to act without hatred, to wait without poisoning the weight, to grieve without rejecting life, to be unfinished without declaring yourself broken. The hidden demand for a different present begins to lose its power when the heart learns it can remain with what is here. There is also a false belief that peace should feel like constant happiness. Because of this, whenever discomfort appears, people think something is wrong. But peace is not the absence of every unpleasant feeling. Peace is the space that allows feelings to arise without turning them into war. Peace can exist with tears. Peace can exist with uncertainty. Peace can exist with grief. Peace can exist with an unanswered question. It may not feel like excitement. It may feel like a quiet permission to stop fighting. The present moment does not need to be beautiful for awareness to enter it. Awareness can enter a hospital room. Awareness can enter a lonely evening. Awareness can enter a difficult conversation. Awareness can enter failure. Awareness can enter confusion. This is why Buddhist wisdom is so practical. It does not depend on perfect surroundings. It meets life wherever life is happening. When you demand a different present, you also postpone gratitude. The mind says, "How can I be grateful when this problem exists?" But gratitude does not mean pretending the problem is not there. It means allowing the heart to see more than the problem. There may be pain, and there may also be breath. There may be uncertainty, and there may also be support. There may be loss, and there may also be love that once existed. There may be disappointment, and there may also be strength growing quietly. Gratitude is not a denial of suffering. It is a refusal to let suffering become the only thing you see. Resistance narrows the mind. Gratitude widens it. When the mind demands a different present, it focuses on absence. When gratitude enters, it notices presence. The heart can say, "This is hard, and still there is something here I do not want to miss." That sentence can save a person from becoming completely swallowed by pain. The demand for a different present also creates impatience with healing. The mind wants grief to end on schedule. It wants clarity by morning. It wants forgiveness without waves. It wants confidence without practice. It wants peace without returning to the breath again and again. But healing is not a command. It is a process. It unfolds as causes and conditions change. You cannot bully the heart into freedom. You can only create the conditions where freedom becomes possible. This means showing up kindly, sleeping when you can, eating with care, speaking truthfully, setting boundaries, sitting in silence, letting tears come without shame, returning to the breath, choosing not to feed the story, asking for help when needed. These may look small, but they are real. They are the daily conditions that slowly release the heart from its demand that healing should look different from how healing actually looks. Sometimes the present is difficult because you are in transition. You are no longer who you were, but not yet who you are becoming. This space can feel uncomfortable. The mind wants to rush it because it does not like being undefined. It says, I should know by now, I should be settled by now, I should have arrived by now. But transition is a sacred space if you do not turn it into punishment. It is where old patterns loosen and new wisdom forms. A caterpillar does not become a butterfly in a moment. There is a hidden stage where the old form dissolves. If the mind could speak there, it might say, this should not be happening, I am falling apart. But something deeper is taking shape. Human change can feel like this too. Sometimes what feels like failure is the loss of an old structure. Sometimes what feels like confusion is the mind making room for a wider truth. Sometimes what feels like emptiness is space being cleared for a different life. The hidden demand for a different present can make transformation feel like punishment. But when you meet the present honestly, you may begin to see that not every uncomfortable season is against you. Some seasons are removing illusions. Some are teaching patience. Some are revealing strength. Some are showing you what can no longer come with you. The present may not be what you wanted, but it may still be part of your awakening. This is not something to force. You do not need to turn every pain into a beautiful story. You only need to remain open enough to learn when learning becomes possible. Sometimes the lesson comes much later. Sometimes the wisdom grows after the tears. Sometimes the meaning appears only when the heart has stopped demanding it. The present does not always explain itself immediately, but if you reject it completely, you may never hear what it eventually reveals. Buddhist wisdom teaches the middle way. Not indulgence, not suppression, not chasing every desire, not hating desire, not escaping the world, not being possessed by it. With the hidden demand for a different present, the middle way means you can acknowledge your wish for change while still respecting what is here. You can say, I want this to improve, and also, this is the moment I have. You can hold both truth and desire without turning desire into a whip. This balance is mature peace. It is not lazy. It is not cold. It is not hopeless. It is awake. It knows that the present is not always the final form of your life, but it is the only material you can work with. You cannot shape tomorrow directly. You shape tomorrow by how you meet today. If today is met with hatred, tomorrow carries that hatred. If today is met with awareness, tomorrow receives different seeds. The heart becomes free when it no longer needs the present to become perfect before it opens. It can open a little in uncertainty. It can open a little in grief. It can open a little in waiting. It can open a little in imperfection. This does not happen dramatically. It happens quietly. A breath softens, a thought is released, a small kindness is accepted, a moment is allowed to be what it is, a burden is not picked up again. This is how the prison door begins to move. The demand for a different present says, not this. Wisdom says, this is here. The demand says, I cannot bear it. Wisdom says, let me meet one breath. The demand says, it must change now. Wisdom says, what can be done with care? The demand says, I am trapped. Wisdom says, maybe the trap is not only the moment, but the refusal to enter it honestly. This realization is not meant to blame you. It is meant to empower you. If the trap were only the outside situation, your freedom would depend entirely on the world changing first. But if part of the trap is resistance, then part of the freedom can begin inside you now. Not complete freedom from all conditions, not instant peace, but the first opening, the first unclenching, the first return to breath, the first moment where you stop making war with what is here. And maybe that is enough for today, not to solve the whole life, not to understand every wound, not to become perfectly accepting, just to stop demanding for one honest moment that now becomes something else before you are willing to be present. Just to say, this is my life in this breath, let me not abandon it. There is power in that. There is tenderness in that. There is the beginning of liberation in that. Because the present moment, even when painful, is not your enemy. It is the doorway. It is where the body breathes. It is where the heart feels. It is where wisdom notices. It is where choice becomes possible. It is where the next gentle step can be taken. When you demand a different present, you stand outside the doorway, waiting for it to change shape. When you accept this present enough to enter it, the path can finally continue. And as this becomes clearer, another truth is waiting close by. If demanding a different present traps the heart, then refusing what has already happened gives the past a stronger grip. The mind thinks denial weakens pain, but often it gives pain more power. And this is where we must look next. Why refusing what has already happened secretly strengthens its power over you. And once you see that demanding a different present keeps the heart trapped, the next truth becomes even more personal. The mind does not only resist what is happening now, it also resists what has already happened. It stands before the past as if the past is still waiting to be edited. It keeps touching the old wound, not to heal it, but to ask it to become something else. And this is how yesterday gains more power than it deserves. There are moments in life that hurt once, but because the mind refuses to accept that they happened, they keep returning with new strength. The event is over, but the inner argument continues. The words were spoken long ago, but the mind still answers them. The person left, but the heart still waits at the door. The mistake was made, but the self-punishment keeps renewing itself. The loss occurred, but the mind keeps trying to bargain with absence. This is how refusing what has already happened secretly strengthens its power over you. It keeps the past alive, not as memory, but as an unfinished battle. Buddhist wisdom asks us to look at this with honesty. The past cannot be changed by rejection. It cannot be softened by denial. It cannot be repaired by replaying the same moment in 100 different ways. What has happened has already entered the fabric of your life. The question is no longer, how do I make it not have happened? The question is, how do I meet what happened without letting it keep ruling the present? That question is painful because the mind often believes that acceptance means betrayal. If you accept the past, it thinks you are saying it was okay. If you stop fighting the memory, it thinks you are letting someone get away with what they did. If you stop blaming yourself, it thinks you are becoming careless. If you stop replaying the mistake, it thinks you have failed to learn. So the mind holds on tightly, believing resistance is loyalty to justice, loyalty to pain, loyalty to the person you were before the wound. But resistance does not protect the past. It imprisons the present. To accept that something happened is not to bless it. It is not to call it right. It is not to erase the damage. It is not to pretend the heart was not changed. Acceptance simply means you stop asking reality to undo itself before you begin healing. It means you stop giving yesterday the authority to decide whether today can breathe. Many people are not trapped by the past itself, but by the demand that the past should have been different. They wake up in today, but the mind returns to that one conversation, that one decision, that one betrayal, that one missed chance, that one ending. It says, if only I had spoken differently, if only I had noticed sooner, if only they had stayed, if only I had not trusted them, if only life had gone another way. These words may feel natural, but repeated too often, they become a chain. The phrase, if only, can become one of the heaviest prisons of the mind. It offers the illusion of control over what is already gone. It makes the mind feel busy, as if reviewing the past might somehow open a hidden door. But most of the time, it does not open a door. It only keeps you standing in front of a wall, hurting yourself against something that will not move. Buddhist teaching does not ask you to forget. Forgetting is not always possible, and it is not always wise. Some memories carry lessons. Some memories protect you from repeating old harm. Some memories deserve respect because they mark real moments of love, pain, growth, or loss. The problem is not memory itself. The problem is clinging to memory, as if clinging can change what memory shows. A memory can be held lightly or tightly. Held lightly, it becomes a teacher. Held tightly, it becomes a master. Held lightly, it says, this happened and I learned. Held tightly, it says, this happened and I must keep suffering so it does not disappear. Held lightly, it gives wisdom. Held tightly, it takes your breath. Refusing the past often begins as shock. Something happens that the heart cannot absorb at once. The mind says no. This first no is human. It is the mind's way of protecting itself from too much truth too quickly. But if the first no becomes a permanent home, suffering deepens. Shock is a doorway the heart must pass through slowly. Denial is when the heart sits at the doorway and refuses to enter life again. This is why time alone does not heal everything. Time may pass, but if the mind keeps refusing, the wound may stay fresh. 10 years can pass, and the body may be older, the place may be different, the people may have changed. But inside, the same argument may still be playing. Time gives space for healing, but awareness allows healing to happen. Without awareness, time can simply become a long hallway where pain echoes. The past gains power when it remains unexamined, not examined with obsession, but with gentle clarity. Many people either avoid the past completely or drown in it. Avoidance says, I will not look. Drowning says, I cannot stop looking. Buddhist wisdom offers another way, seeing. Seeing means looking with steadiness, not panic. It means allowing the truth of what happened to be known without turning it into your whole identity. When you refuse what happened, the mind has to keep working to push it away. This uses energy. Denial is not rest. Suppression is not peace. It takes effort to keep a memory buried. It takes effort to pretend you are not hurt. It takes effort to act as if the past has no effect when your reactions show that it does. The body often carries what the mouth refuses to say. The shoulders tighten, the sleep becomes restless, the heart becomes guarded, the breath becomes shallow, the mind becomes quick to defend itself. This is why the body can remember what the mind tries to reject. A sound, a place, a tone of voice, a date, a smell, a silence, or a familiar look can bring back an old feeling. The present moment may be safe, but the body reacts as if the past has returned. This does not mean you are weak. It means something inside was never fully met with compassion. Refusal left it waiting. Buddhist wisdom teaches that what is not met remains active in hidden ways. A wound that is denied does not disappear. It may become fear, it may become anger, it may become control, it may become distrust, it may become numbness, it may become the need to please everyone, it may become the habit of expecting the worst. The past gains power when it disguises itself as your personality. Someone who was betrayed may say, "I am just not a trusting person." Someone who was ignored may say, "I just do not need anyone." Someone who was shamed may say, "I just like being perfect." Someone who was disappointed many times may say, "I just expect nothing." But beneath these identities, there may be old pain asking to be seen. Refusing what happened can make pain look like character. This is not said to blame you, it is said to free you. If a pattern was learned through pain, it can be softened through awareness. If a wall was built for protection, it can be examined with kindness. If a fear was born from the past, it does not have to govern every future moment. But first, the mind must stop saying, "That did not affect me." It must be brave enough to say, "Something happened, and part of me adapted around it." There is dignity in that admission. It means you survived. It means the mind found a way to continue. But survival patterns are not always freedom patterns. What helped you endure one season may now be limiting the next one. The guarded heart may have protected you then, but now it may prevent love from entering. The constant alertness may have helped you avoid danger then, but now it may keep the body tired. The silence may have kept you safe then, but now it may keep your truth buried. Refusing the past keeps these patterns unquestioned. Accepting that the past happened allows you to ask, "What did I learn there that I no longer need to obey?" This question is powerful. It does not erase the past. It removes the past from the throne. It helps you see that a painful chapter may explain your reactions, but it does not have to command your whole life. The mind often strengthens the past by making it personal in a permanent way. It says, "Because this happened, I am ruined. Because they left, I am unlovable. Because I failed, I am incapable. Because I was hurt, I am unsafe everywhere." This is how one event becomes a life sentence. The event may have been painful, but the identity created from it becomes even heavier. Buddhist wisdom loosens this by teaching impermanence and non-self. What you experienced is real, but it is not the totality of who you are. The self is not a fixed stone. It is a living process shaped by conditions, choices, awareness, habits, and practice. Pain may condition the mind, but awareness can recondition it. A memory may arise, but it does not have to define the one who sees it. The one who can observe the memory is already larger than the memory. This is why mindfulness is so healing. When a painful memory arises, the untrained mind falls into it and becomes the old self again. It feels the same fear, the same shame, the same anger, the same helplessness. But mindfulness says, a memory is arising. This creates distance, not cold distance, but wise distance. You are not denying the memory. You are seeing it as something present in awareness, not as the whole of reality. The difference is small, but life-changing. I am back there becomes the mind is remembering. I am broken becomes pain is being felt. This will always control me becomes this is a strong wave and waves pass. Mindfulness does not erase the wave. It teaches you how not to drown inside it. Refusing what happened also strengthens its power by keeping forgiveness misunderstood. Many people believe they cannot heal unless they forgive immediately, and because they are not ready, they feel guilty. Others believe forgiveness means excusing harm, so they keep anger alive as protection. Buddhist wisdom is more careful than that. Forgiveness is not forced. It is not performance. It is not pretending. It is a release that becomes possible when the heart no longer wants to be tied to the wound. Sometimes the first release is not forgiving another person. Sometimes the first release is forgiving yourself for not knowing, not seeing, not leaving sooner, not speaking sooner, not being stronger then. The mind can be merciless toward the version of you that lived through the past. It judges that younger self with today's wisdom. But that is unfair. Today's wisdom came partly because of what that self survived. Refusing the past often includes refusing your own humanity inside it. You say, "I should have known," but maybe you did not have the information. You say, "I should have done better," but maybe you were doing the best you could with the fear, love, confusion, or pressure you had then. You say, "I should not have trusted." But trust is not a crime. Someone else's failure to honor it is not proof that your heart was foolish. Self-compassion is necessary because shame keeps the past powerful. Shame says, "This happened because something is wrong with me." Wisdom says, "This happened because of causes and conditions, and now I can learn." Shame freezes. Wisdom moves. Shame hides. Wisdom bows and begins again. Shame turns memory into punishment. Wisdom turns memory into instruction. The past also grows stronger when you keep trying to win an argument that ended long ago. Maybe someone misunderstood you. Maybe they blamed you unfairly. Maybe they never heard your side. Maybe they walked away with a version of the story that made you look small. The mind may return again and again, trying to prove, explain, correct, and defend. This is understandable. The heart wants to be seen accurately, but sometimes the person you want to convince is not available for truth. Sometimes their mind is closed. Sometimes they benefit from misunderstanding you. Sometimes the court you keep pleading in has no judge who can free you. Buddhist wisdom gently asks, can you stop making your peace depend on being understood by those committed to misunderstanding? This is not easy, but it is freeing. You may still speak truth where it is useful. You may still correct what can be corrected, but you do not need to spend your life chasing a witness who refuses to see. The past gains power when your freedom depends on someone else admitting what happened. This is why inner acknowledgement matters. Sometimes the healing sentence is not, "they finally understood." Sometimes it is, "I know what happened." Sometimes it is, "My pain is real, even if they deny it." Sometimes it is, "I do not need their agreement to begin healing." This is not pride, it is self-respect. It stops handing the key to your heart to people who may never return it. Refusing what happened can also make you repeat it. This sounds strange, but it is often true. What the mind refuses to understand, it may unconsciously recreate. If you never look at an old pattern, you may choose familiar pain because it feels normal. If you never examine why you tolerated neglect, you may tolerate it again. If you never see how fear shaped your choices, fear may keep choosing for you. If you never face the wound of rejection, you may keep chasing people who make you feel the same ache. This is not because life is punishing you. It is because unconscious patterns seek completion. The heart returns to familiar places, hoping for a different ending. But a different ending requires awareness, not repetition. You cannot heal the past by recreating its conditions and hoping someone finally behaves differently. You heal by seeing the pattern clearly and choosing from wisdom instead of wound. The Buddhist path is a path of waking up. Waking up means seeing the causes of suffering. It means noticing craving, clinging, aversion, ignorance, and habit. When you refuse the past, ignorance remains. Not ignorance as stupidity, but ignorance as not seeing clearly. You may know the story of what happened, but not yet understand how it shaped your mind. You may remember the pain, but not yet see the attachment beneath it. You may know who hurt you, but not yet see where you abandoned yourself afterward. This deeper seeing is not always comfortable. It may reveal that part of you still wants approval from someone who harmed you. It may reveal that you are still trying to prove your worth to the past. It may reveal that your anger is protecting grief. It may reveal that your independence is partly fear of needing anyone. It may reveal that your control is a response to old helplessness. but every honest seeing removes a little darkness. Refusal keeps the mind in darkness because it says, "Do not look." Awareness brings a lamp, and once the lamp is lit, you may discover that the monster in the room is not as shapeless as it seemed. It has a name, it has conditions, it has a history, it has triggers, it has habits, and what can be seen can be worked with. There is also suffering in wanting the past to give back what it took. The mind says, "I want my time back. I want my innocence back. I want my trust back. I want my old self back. I want the years back. I want the chance back." This grief is real. Some things cannot be replaced in the form they had before. Buddhist wisdom does not deny this sorrow. It holds it tenderly, but it also teaches that life can still grow after what cannot be recovered. A tree that loses a branch does not become the same tree again, but it can still grow toward light. The scar remains part of its shape, but the scar is not the end of its life. In the same way, healing does not always mean becoming the person you were before. Sometimes healing means becoming someone deeper, more awake, more compassionate, more truthful because of what you have met. The mind may resist this because it wants restoration, not transformation. It says, "I do not want to become new. I want what was taken to be returned." That longing deserves compassion. But if the exact return is impossible, clinging to it becomes another wound. The path then becomes learning how to live meaningfully after what cannot be restored. This is not easy, but it is possible. Refusing the past also steals the present by keeping attention locked behind you. Attention is life energy. Wherever attention goes, energy follows. If attention is always returning to what cannot be changed, the present becomes undernourished. Relationships in front of you receive less presence. The body receives less care. Opportunities receive less courage. Joy receives less permission. The future receives seeds of fear instead of wisdom. This does not mean you should never think about the past. It means the past should not be allowed to consume the attention needed for today's life. A memory can visit, but it should not move in and take the whole house. When the past arises, you can bow to it, learn from it, soothe what it awakens, and then return. Return to the breath. Return to the task. Return to the person in front of you. Return to the ground under your feet. This return is practice. Each return weakens the grip of refusal. The mind may say, "But we need to think about this again." Sometimes yes, but not always. Sometimes the wisest response is, "We have learned what we can for now. Let us come back to living." This is not avoidance, it is balance. Reflection has a place, repetition has a cost. You can tell the difference by the fruit it produces. If thinking about the past brings understanding, humility, compassion, or a wise next step, it may be reflection. If it brings only tension, blame, shame, revenge, or hopelessness, it may be resistance. Buddhist wisdom often asks us to look at the fruit of the mind. What does this thought grow? What does this memory produce when I feed it? Does it lead to freedom, or does it deepen the chain? The past becomes powerful when it is fed with daily attention, but never digested. Digestion means taking in the lesson and releasing what cannot nourish you. If food is never digested, it becomes sickness. In the same way, experience that is never digested becomes emotional heaviness. You keep carrying raw events inside, still sharp, still undigested, still demanding energy. Healing is the process of digesting life. You take what teaches, you release what poisons. You allow what happened to become part of wisdom, not a permanent injury to identity. This process requires patience. Some events are not digested quickly. Some grief takes time. Some memories need many rounds of compassion. Some truths can only be touched in small amounts. Do not force yourself. Forcing is another form of resistance. The heart opens at the pace it can. Buddhist practice is steady, not violent. It returns again and again with gentleness. One breath, one honest sentence, one moment of noticing, one act of self-kindness, one decision not to replay the story tonight, one boundary, one tear allowed, one apology offered, one forgiveness delayed until it becomes real, one memory seen without becoming the whole world. These are small steps, but small steps repeated become a path. Refusing what happened strengthens its power because it keeps you in relationship with the past through struggle. Whatever you fight mentally, you remain connected to. The fight becomes a cord. Hatred is a cord. Regret is a cord. Denial is a cord. Obsession is a cord. Even the sentence, "I do not care," can be a cord if the body tightens every time the memory appears. Freedom is not proven by how loudly you reject the past. Freedom is felt in how softly the past can arise without taking control. This softness may take time. At first, the memory may still hurt. Later, it may hurt but not command. Later still, it may become something you can hold with sadness and wisdom. Eventually, some memories become quiet, not erased but no longer burning. They become chapters, not chains. They become evidence of survival, not proof of defeat. Buddhist wisdom points toward this kind of release. It does not promise that life leaves no marks. It teaches that marks do not have to become masters. It does not promise that the past becomes pleasant. It teaches that the past can lose its authority. It does not promise that you will never remember. It teaches that remembering can happen inside awareness instead of suffering. The mind may ask, how do I accept what should never have happened? Begin by separating acceptance from approval. You are not saying, it was okay. You are saying, it is true that it happened. That is all. Let that truth stand. Then breathe, then feel what comes. Grief may come, anger may come, numbness may come. Let the body move slowly through the truth. Do not demand instant peace. Just stop demanding that truth disappear. Then ask, what does this pain need from me now? Not from the person who caused it, not from the past, from you now. Maybe it needs rest, maybe protection, maybe honesty, maybe support. Maybe a boundary, maybe a ritual of release, maybe fewer replays, maybe permission to mourn, maybe permission to live again. This question brings power back to the present. The past cannot care for the wound. The person who hurt you may never care for it. The lost chance cannot return to care for it. But you, in this moment, can begin to care for it. This is where healing becomes intimate. You stop waiting for time to reverse and start becoming the compassionate presence your pain has needed. There is a Buddhist tenderness in placing a hand over the heart and saying, yes, this happened. Yes, it hurt. Yes, I carried it. And now I am here. These words are simple, but they gather the scattered self. They bring the abandoned part back into the present. They tell the nervous system that the danger is no longer happening in the same way. They remind the mind that memory is not the moment. Memory is not the moment. This is important. The memory may be vivid, but it is still a memory. The feeling may be strong, but it is arising now as sensation, thought, and emotion. You can meet it now with resources you may not have had then. You may have more understanding now. More language now, more choice now, more distance now, more strength now. The past happened, but your relationship with it can change. That is where freedom lives, not in changing what happened, but in changing how it lives inside you. At first, it may live as fear. Then, with awareness, it may live as grief. Later, it may live as wisdom. Later still, it may live as compassion for yourself and others. The same past can become different in the heart, not because the facts change, but because consciousness changes. This is one of the most hopeful truths in Buddhist wisdom. Conditions shape suffering, but new conditions can shape freedom. If a painful memory has been fed by denial, shame, and replaying, it has grown strong. But if it is now met with awareness, compassion, patience, and right understanding, something new begins to grow. The mind is trainable, the heart is healable. The past is not editable, but the suffering around it can be softened. Refusing what happened says, "I cannot live unless yesterday changes." Acceptance says, "Yesterday will not change, but I can change the way I carry it." Refusal says, "This memory owns me." Acceptance says, "This memory is part of my path, but not the whole path." Refusal says, "I must keep fighting." Acceptance says, "I can stop fighting and begin tending." Tending is different from fighting. Fighting keeps the wound hot. Tending keeps it clean. Fighting asks, "Who is to blame?" Tending asks, "What needs care?" Fighting repeats the injury. Tending supports repair. Fighting keeps the past powerful. Tending helps the present become safe. So when an old memory rises, meet it as gently as you can. Do not immediately push it away. Do not immediately build a temple around it. Let it be known. A memory is here. Notice the body. Notice the breath. Notice the story that tries to begin. Then choose one wise action. Maybe breathe, maybe write, maybe pray, maybe speak to someone trustworthy, maybe rest, maybe return to the task before you, maybe say, "Not now, mind. We have seen this, and we are safe enough to return." This is not perfect. Some days the past will pull harder. Some nights the mind will replay what you thought you had released. Do not treat this as failure. Healing is not a straight line. Sometimes the same memory returns at a deeper layer, asking for softer attention. Sometimes the heart revisits old places, not because it is going backward, but because it is ready to free another part of itself. Be patient with the process. The past may have had years to form its grip. Give your freedom time to form its roots. Every moment of awareness matters. Every refusal to feed the old story matters. Every act of compassion matters. Every return to the present matters. Slowly the power begins to shift. The past becomes something that happened, not something that is still happening. The memory becomes a visitor, not a ruler. The wound becomes a teacher, not a prison. This is the quiet liberation Buddhist wisdom points toward. You cannot undo the first arrow, but you can stop sharpening it every day. You cannot erase every scar, but you can stop worshipping the blade. You cannot make yesterday innocent again, but you can stop letting yesterday steal all the innocence left in today. Refusing what has already happened secretly strengthens its power, because refusal keeps your energy tied to the impossible. It keeps the mind bargaining with time, defending against ghosts, and waiting for a past that cannot return corrected. Acceptance returns that energy to life. It lets you grieve what was lost, learn what must be learned, protect what must be protected, and finally begin again from the only place beginnings ever happen, now. And when this becomes clear, the next truth begins to open. Because once the mind refuses the past, it also starts to exaggerate the present pain. It takes discomfort that could move through the body and makes it feel endless, personal, and inescapable. It turns a temporary ache into a permanent sentence. And this is where we must go next. How resistance makes temporary discomfort feel like permanent punishment. And once you see how refusing the past gives it more power, another hidden pattern begins to appear. The mind does not only hold on to what has already happened, it also takes what is happening now and makes it feel much heavier than it truly is. A feeling rises, a season becomes uncomfortable, the body grows tired, the heart feels uncertain, and before the moment has had time to pass, resistance whispers, This will never end. That whisper is dangerous because the moment the mind believes temporary discomfort is permanent, the heart begins to lose strength. There are pains in life that are real but not endless. There are emotions that are intense but not eternal. There are seasons that feel heavy, but they are still seasons. There are thoughts that shout loudly, but they are still thoughts. Yet when resistance enters, it takes a passing cloud and paints it across the whole sky. It takes one difficult day and calls it a ruined life. It takes one painful feeling and calls it a permanent identity. It takes one uncomfortable chapter and calls it a sentence. This is how temporary discomfort begins to feel like permanent punishment. Buddhist wisdom teaches that everything that arises is subject to change. This is not just a beautiful idea. It is one of the deepest truths of existence. Every feeling changes. Every thought changes. Every condition changes. Every body changes. Every relationship changes. Every fear changes. Every moment comes, stays for a while, and passes into something else. But the resistant mind forgets this. When pain appears, it does not say, "This is a wave." It says, "This is my whole ocean." That is where suffering becomes heavier. A person feels anxiety in the morning, and the mind says, "Today is already ruined." A person feels sadness at night, and the mind says, "This is who I am now." A person faces rejection, and the mind says, "I will always be unwanted." A person struggles for a season, and the mind says, "My life will never become peaceful." In each case, the discomfort is real, but the mind adds permanence. It makes the pain feel like a destiny. This is one of the greatest tricks of resistance. It does not only say, "I do not like this." It says, "This will always be like this." And once the mind believes that, the heart begins to collapse under the weight of a future that has not arrived. But look closely. How many feelings have you had in your life that once felt endless, yet changed? How many worries once filled your chest, yet later became memories? How many nights felt unbearable, yet morning still came? How many emotions convinced you they would stay forever, yet somehow shifted, softened, or disappeared? The mind forgets this when it is in pain. It loses sight of impermanence. It believes the present feeling is the final truth. Buddhist wisdom brings you back to the movement of life. It says, "Do not freeze this moment into forever." The pain may be here, but it is not fixed. The sadness may be strong, but it is moving. The fear may be loud, but it is changing. The discomfort may be unpleasant, but it is not the whole path. When the mind remembers this, space enters, and where there is space, suffering begins to loosen. Resistance makes discomfort feel like punishment because it personalizes pain. It says, "Why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? Why can't I be normal? Why is my life always difficult?" These questions may come from exhaustion, but they can make pain sharper. They turn discomfort into a verdict. They make the mind feel singled out by life, as if the whole universe has chosen to punish one heart. But discomfort is not always punishment. Sometimes it is simply a condition. Hunger is a condition. Tiredness is a condition. Grief is a condition. Uncertainty is a condition. Fear is a condition. Change is a condition. None of these are easy, but they do not always mean you are being punished. They mean you are alive inside a changing world. When you stop seeing discomfort as punishment, you can meet it with less fear. You can say, "This is unpleasant," without saying, "Life is against me." You can say, "This is hard," without saying, "I am cursed." You can say, "This feeling hurts," without saying, "This feeling is here to destroy me." That difference matters. The first statement describes reality. The second one adds suffering. The mind often turns discomfort into punishment because it expects life to be smooth when it is doing the right thing. It thinks, if I am trying, things should be easy. If I am kind, people should be kind. If I am healing, I should not feel pain. If I am growing, I should not struggle. If I am on the right path, I should not feel lost. But this is not how life works. Even the right path can feel uncomfortable. Even healing can hurt. Even growth can feel confusing. Even wisdom can arrive through pressure. A seed pushing through soil may be moving toward light, but the process is not soft. A wound being cleaned may sting, but the sting is not punishment. A muscle being strengthened may ache, but the ache is not failure. In the same way, a heart learning freedom may feel discomfort, not because it is going backward, but because old patterns are being touched. Resistance says, if this hurts, something is wrong. Wisdom says, some discomfort is part of change. Resistance says, I should not feel this. Wisdom says, this feeling is here, and I can learn how to hold it. Resistance says, this is punishment. Wisdom says, this may be a passage. This is a very different way of living. When discomfort is seen as punishment, the heart becomes afraid of every hard feeling. It runs from sadness. It fights anxiety. It hates loneliness. It panics at uncertainty. It becomes desperate to escape any inner weather that does not feel pleasant. But when discomfort is seen as a passing condition, the heart becomes more patient. It does not enjoy pain, but it stops treating pain as proof that life has gone wrong. Buddhist practice teaches us to observe sensations directly, not the story around them, not the fear about them, not the meaning the mind gives them. The sensation itself. Tightness in the chest, heat in the face, heaviness in the stomach, pressure in the head, restlessness in the hands, a trembling breath. When you bring attention to the body in this simple way, the discomfort often becomes less solid. It stops being a monster and becomes a pattern of sensations changing moment by moment. This is important because the mind loves to turn sensation into story. A tight chest becomes, I cannot handle my life. A tired body becomes, I am falling apart. A lonely evening becomes, no one will ever stay. A confused morning becomes, I will never find my path. But when you return to direct experience, you may see that what is actually present is smaller than the story. It may still hurt, but it is no longer infinite. A feeling can be met one breath at a time. A story tries to make you carry a whole lifetime at once. This is why the breath matters so deeply. The breath breaks forever into now. Resistance says, this pain will always be here. The breath says, this inhale is here. This exhale is here. Resistance says, I cannot survive this season. The breath says, can you meet this moment? Resistance speaks in years. The breath speaks in seconds. And sometimes seconds are the doorway back to peace. When discomfort feels permanent, do not ask yourself to solve your whole future. Ask yourself to meet the next breath, then the next, then the next. This is not weakness, this is wisdom. The mind becomes overwhelmed because it tries to carry tomorrow, next month, next year, and the rest of life inside one painful moment. The breath brings the burden back down to its true size. Temporary discomfort becomes permanent punishment when the mind adds the word always. I always feel this way. Things always go wrong. People always leave. I always suffer. Be careful with always. It is often resistance speaking in the language of despair. It takes repeated pain and turns it into a law. It takes a pattern and calls it fate. It takes fear and dresses it as truth. But life is more fluid than always. Even if something has happened many times, awareness can begin a new condition. Even if you have reacted a certain way for years, practice can open another response. Even if sadness has visited often, it is still made of moments. Even if loneliness has been familiar, it is not your permanent name. The mind may say, always, but Buddhist wisdom says, look again, everything is changing. Another word resistance uses is never. I will never heal. I will never be peaceful. I will never be loved. I will never understand. I will never recover. These words are heavy because they close the future before it has arrived. They turn fear into a wall. They make the heart surrender to a prediction that may not be true. The future is not here yet. This is not just a fact. It is a mercy. Because the future is not here, it is not finished. Because it is not finished, causes and conditions can still change. New understanding can arise. New support can appear. New choices can be made. New strength can grow. New peace can be practiced. The mind may not see the whole path, but not seeing the path is not proof that no path exists. Resistance makes discomfort feel like punishment by demanding an immediate end. It says, this must stop now. When the feeling does not stop, the mind becomes angry. Then it says, why is this still here? Then fear grows. Then shame appears. Now the original discomfort has company. There is the feeling, and there is anger at the feeling. There is pain, and there is fear of the pain. There is sadness, and there is shame about the sadness. This layering makes everything heavier. Buddhist wisdom teaches a gentler way. Instead of saying, go away, you say, I see you. Instead of saying, I hate this feeling, you say, this is painful, and I will meet it carefully. Instead of saying, this should be gone by now, you say, this is still here, so let me bring patience. This does not make you passive. It stops you from adding violence to your inner world. A feeling that is attacked often becomes louder. A feeling that is allowed may begin to move. This does not mean you indulge every feeling or let it control your actions. It means you stop fighting its existence. You can feel irritation without speaking harshly. You can feel loneliness without running back to what harms you. You can feel fear without letting fear decide everything. You can feel grief without declaring life meaningless. This is emotional freedom. Not freedom from ever feeling pain, but freedom from being ruled by the panic that pain should not be here. Resistance also makes discomfort permanent by turning it into identity. A person does not simply say, I feel anxious. They say, I am an anxious person. They do not say, I feel lost. They say, I am lost. They do not say, I feel hurt. They say, I am damaged. This may seem like a small difference, but it changes everything. A feeling can pass. An identity feels fixed. A feeling is something moving through awareness. An identity feels like the shape of the whole self. Buddhist wisdom invites you to use softer, more accurate language inside yourself. Instead of I am broken, say, a painful state is present. Instead of I am hopeless, say, the mind is producing hopeless thoughts. Instead of I am stuck forever, say, stuckness is being felt right now. This does not deny the emotion. It gives it room to change. It reminds you that awareness is larger than the state it is noticing. You are not every storm that passes through you. You are the space in which the storm is known. This does not mean there is a separate solid self hidden behind everything. Buddhist teaching is more subtle than that. It points to the fact that what you call me is made of changing processes. Thoughts, sensations, memories, habits, feelings, and perceptions arise and pass. When you see this, you stop building a permanent prison from temporary states. This insight can bring relief. If anger arises, it does not mean you are anger forever. If fear arises, it does not mean fear owns you. If shame arises, it does not mean shame is truth. If sadness arises, it does not mean sadness is your destiny. These states are visitors. Some stay longer than others. Some knock loudly. some return many times. But they are still visitors. Resistance turns visitors into rulers by reacting as if they should never have entered. Awareness lets you meet them at the door. Fear is here. Sadness is here. Restlessness is here. Pain is here. There is dignity in this. There is calm strength in knowing what is present without becoming its servant. Another reason discomfort feels like punishment is because the mind compares the current moment to how it thinks life should feel. It says, other people are happy, other people are calm, other people are moving forward. Why am I here? Comparison makes discomfort feel like failure. It says your pain is proof that you are behind, but most people carry hidden discomfort. Some hide it behind success, some hide it behind busyness, some hide it behind humor, some hide it behind spiritual language. The presence of pain does not mean you are failing at life. It means you are meeting one of life's conditions. The Buddhist path is not about becoming a person who never hurts. It is about becoming a person who understands hurt wisely. Even monks feel discomfort. Even wise people feel grief, illness, aging, uncertainty, and disappointment. The difference is not that they live without unpleasant experiences. The difference is that they train the mind not to turn every unpleasant experience into a permanent self, a personal punishment, or a reason to hate reality. This training is simple, but not always easy. It begins with noticing. Notice when the mind adds permanence. Notice when it says always or never. Notice when it turns pain into identity. Notice when it treats discomfort as punishment. Notice when it demands instant relief. Notice when it compares your inner world to someone else's outside appearance. Every noticing is a small awakening. Then bring kindness. Without kindness, noticing can become another weapon. The mind may say, now I am resisting, I am doing this wrong. That is more resistance. Instead, meet the pattern gently. Ah, the mind is making this feel permanent. Ah, the body is afraid. Ah, the heart wants relief. This kind of inner language matters. It creates safety. And when the inner world feels safer, discomfort does not need to become a battlefield. Temporary discomfort also feels permanent when the mind loses contact with small changes. A person may feel sad and think the sadness has not changed at all, but if they observe closely, they may notice it rises and falls. It is stronger in the chest, then softer. It becomes a thought, then a heaviness, then a memory, then a quietness, then a wave again. It is not one solid block. It is moving. Seeing movement weakens the illusion of permanence. This is why careful attention is medicine. The more closely you observe an experience, the less fixed it becomes. Pain that looked like one solid thing is seen as many changing parts. A thought appears, a sensation follows, a memory flashes, a fear rises, a breath shifts, a sound enters, the body adjusts, the emotion changes shape. This is impermanence seen directly, not merely believed. When impermanence is only an idea, it may comfort the mind for a moment. When impermanence is seen in experience, it transforms the way you relate to pain. You begin to trust that no state is final. You begin to stop panicking at inner weather. You begin to understand that the heart can hold more than the mind believed. Resistance makes discomfort feel like punishment because it asks, when will this end? Again and again. But sometimes a more helpful question is, how can I meet this while it is here? The first question may create impatience. The second creates wisdom. If the discomfort ends soon, good. If it stays for a while, you have not spent the whole time at war with it. You have practiced presence. Presence does not mean loving the pain. It means staying close enough to yourself that pain does not become abandonment. Many people abandon themselves when discomfort appears. They judge themselves. distract themselves, numb themselves, blame themselves, or run toward anything that promises quick relief. But the uncomfortable part of you does not need abandonment, it needs steadiness. To stay with yourself in discomfort is a deep act of compassion. It says, I will not leave myself just because this moment is unpleasant. It says, I can be here with my own heart. This is how the inner child, the wounded mind, the tired body, and the fearful heart begin to trust again. They learn that discomfort does not mean rejection, it does not mean punishment, it does not mean exile, it means care is needed. Buddhist compassion is not sentimental, it is practical. It asks, what reduces suffering? Sometimes what reduces suffering is rest. Sometimes it is wise action. Sometimes it is silence. Sometimes it is speaking truth. Sometimes it is changing a habit. Sometimes it is letting a feeling pass without feeding it. Sometimes it is getting support. Sometimes it is forgiving slowly. Sometimes it is setting a boundary. Compassion does not always look soft from the outside, but its root is care. Resistance, on the other hand, often chooses reactions that increase suffering. It may push harder when rest is needed. It may isolate when support is needed. It may cling when release is needed. It may distract when honesty is needed. It may attack when listening is needed. It may collapse when one small step is needed. This is why discomfort feels longer under resistance. The mind keeps responding in ways that feed the pain. A temporary mood can become a painful week if you build your choices around it without awareness. A moment of loneliness can become a return to harmful company. A moment of shame can become days of self-punishment. A moment of fear can become avoidance that makes the future harder. A moment of anger can become words that damage trust. Resistance does not only interpret discomfort as permanent, it may act in ways that make discomfort last longer. Wisdom asks for a pause, not a large pause, just enough space to ask, what will this feeling ask me to do? Then, will that action reduce suffering or increase it? Fear may ask you to hide, anger may ask you to wound, loneliness may ask you to settle, shame may ask you to disappear, restlessness may ask you to run, but awareness can choose differently. You can feel the pull without obeying it. This is where spiritual strength becomes real, not in speaking peaceful words when life is easy, but in not obeying every difficult state when it rises. You do not need to defeat the feeling. You only need to stop letting it drive without wisdom. A storm may pass through the sky, but you do not have to hand it the steering wheel. Resistance also makes discomfort feel like punishment by forgetting the larger field of life. When pain is present, the mind zooms in. It sees only the ache. It forgets the breath. It forgets the ground. It forgets the hands, the light, the people who care, the small tasks, the simple food, the ordinary signs of life continuing. Pain becomes the entire screen. Awareness widens the view. Widening the view does not remove pain, but it places pain inside a larger space. You can say, this hurts, and there is also breath. This is uncertain, and the ground is still beneath me. This is a hard day, and not every day has been like this. This emotion is strong, and there are still sounds, colors, and small movements around me. This is not forced positivity. It is balanced attention. Balanced attention is important because resistance creates tunnel vision. It makes one discomfort look like the whole of reality. But reality is always wider than what the mind fixates on. There is pain, and there is awareness of pain. There is fear, and there is the breath that knows fear. There is grief, and there is the space that holds grief. There is difficulty, and there may also be one small thing that has not been destroyed. The mind may resist this because it thinks noticing anything good means betraying the pain, but honoring pain does not require ignoring all light. You can be honest about suffering and still receive one small moment of ease. In fact, those small moments may help the heart survive the difficult ones. A bird outside the window, a warm drink, a kind message, a quiet breath, a soft blanket, a little rest. These things do not erase the wound, but they remind the nervous system that pain is not the only thing present. Temporary discomfort becomes punishment when you believe you must solve it before you deserve gentleness. But gentleness is not a reward for being healed. It is one of the conditions that helps healing happen. You do not need to wait until you are calm to speak kindly to yourself. You do not need to wait until you understand everything to rest. You do not need to wait until the pain is gone to place a hand over the heart. You can bring care into the discomfort itself. This care changes the quality of suffering. Pain held with hatred becomes hard. Pain held with tenderness becomes workable. Pain held with panic becomes overwhelming. Pain held with breath becomes bearable in smaller pieces. Pain held with shame becomes isolating. Pain held with compassion becomes part of the human path. There is another subtle trap. Resistance makes discomfort feel permanent by constantly checking whether it is gone. The mind asks, "Am I better now? Is it gone now? Why is it still here? Did I heal yet?" This constant checking keeps attention fixed on the discomfort. It is like staring at a seed every minute and asking why it has not become a tree. The pressure does not help growth. It may even disturb it. Healing often happens when the conditions are right, not when the ego keeps measuring it. Do the practice. Breathe, notice, rest, reflect wisely. Take the next step. Return to kindness. Then let the process work. You do not need to dig up the soil every hour to see if roots are forming. Trust is part of healing. Trust does not mean certainty. It means allowing change to unfold without strangling it. Trust says, "This feeling is here now, but I do not know what it may become." Trust says, "I have met difficult states before, and they moved." Trust says, "I can care for this moment without declaring it permanent." Trust says, "Life is changing, even when I cannot see the change yet." This trust is supported by practice. When you repeatedly observe feelings arise and pass, trust grows. When you survive waves you thought would destroy you, trust grows. When you learn that thoughts can be loud and still not true, trust grows. When you bring compassion to pain and feel the body soften even slightly, trust grows. Over time, the mind becomes less quick to call every discomfort a life sentence. This is the quiet fruit of Buddhist training. The same difficult feeling may arise, but your relationship with it changes. Before, sadness meant punishment. Now sadness means sadness. Before, fear meant danger. Now fear means fear. Before, discomfort meant failure. Now discomfort means a condition is present. This simplicity is freedom. Pain returns to its true size. The mind suffers less when it stops adding a verdict to every feeling. This is bad. This is wrong. This means I am weak. This proves nothing changes. These verdicts become chains. What if the mind learned to replace verdict with observation? Tightness is here. Tiredness is here. A heavy mood is here. A fearful thought is here. Observation leaves room. Verdict closes the room. A temporary discomfort can pass through an open room. In a closed room, it echoes. This is why inner spaciousness matters. Spaciousness is not emptiness. It is the capacity to allow experience without being crushed by it. When spaciousness grows, you can hold grief and still notice beauty. You can hold fear and still take wise action. You can hold confusion and still be patient. You can hold pain and still treat yourself with respect. You are no longer asking life to remove every discomfort before you stand with dignity. And this is where dignity returns. Resistance often makes people feel small before their pain. It says, "You cannot handle this. You are being punished. You will always feel this way. You are trapped." But awareness says, "This is a difficult wave, and I can meet it one breath at a time." That sentence restores dignity. It does not exaggerate strength. It does not deny weakness. It simply refuses to turn the moment into a prison. The heart begins to understand. Discomfort is not always danger. Discomfort is not always failure. Discomfort is not always punishment. Sometimes discomfort is the body asking for care. Sometimes it is the mind releasing old tension. Sometimes it is grief moving. Sometimes it is fear passing through. Sometimes it is growth stretching the edges of identity. Sometimes it is simply a temporary state that needs time. When you stop resisting it, you can listen. You can ask, what is this discomfort pointing toward? Maybe it points toward rest. Maybe it points toward attachment. Maybe it points toward a boundary. Maybe it points toward a truth you have avoided. Maybe it points toward the need to slow down. Maybe it points toward nothing more than the fact that you are human, and this day is hard. Not every discomfort needs a grand meaning. Some discomfort only needs kindness and time. This too is wisdom. The mind loves to analyze everything, but sometimes the most spiritual response is simple care. Drink water, breathe deeply, step outside, let the shoulders drop, say less, rest the eyes, eat gently, stop feeding the story, return to the body, let the wave move. The more you practice this, the less the mind believes in permanent punishment. It begins to see discomfort as movement, not prison. A hard morning can soften by afternoon. A heavy thought can pass after a walk. A wave of grief can rise, break, and leave quiet behind. A season can teach something and end. Even when pain stays longer than you want, your relationship with it can change. And when your relationship changes, the suffering changes. This is the heart of the lesson. Resistance makes temporary discomfort feel like permanent punishment because it adds permanence, identity, fear, judgment, and panic to what is actually changing. It takes a passing state and turns it into a prophecy. It takes pain and calls it proof. It takes discomfort and calls it destiny. But Buddhist wisdom brings you back to what is true. This is a moment, not forever. This is a feeling, not the whole self. This is a condition, not a punishment. This is difficult, but it is moving. So when discomfort arises, pause before you believe the story. Notice the mind reaching for always and never. Notice the body tightening around the feeling. Notice the urge to escape, fight, judge, or collapse. Then return to the breath. Return to the body. Return to the simple truth of impermanence. Say quietly, "This is here now. It is painful, but it is changing. I can meet this breath. I do not need to turn this moment into forever." And as you practice this, the inner world begins to soften. Pain may still visit, but it no longer has to become punishment. Discomfort may still rise, but it no longer has to define you. Difficult seasons may still come, but the mind no longer needs to build a prison around them. You begin to feel a quiet strength, not because life has become easy, but because you have stopped making every hard feeling endless. And from here, another truth begins to reveal itself. Because if resistance makes temporary discomfort feel permanent, then we must ask why the mind resists so fiercely in the first place. What part of us is so afraid of surrendering to truth? What part would rather fight reality than admit it cannot control everything? This brings us to the next doorway. Why the ego would rather fight truth than lose its illusion of control. Pain was never the whole prison. Resistance was the lock. Reality may bring loss, discomfort, betrayal, uncertainty, change, and moments the heart never asked for. But suffering deepens when the mind says, "This should not be happening." That single thought turns pain into war. It turns one difficult moment into 100 imagined battles. It argues with what already is, demands a different present, refuses the past, and makes temporary discomfort feel like permanent punishment. But Buddhist wisdom shows another way, not a weak way, not a passive way, a freer way. Acceptance does not mean you approve of the pain. It means you stop giving resistance permission to wound you again and again. It means you meet life honestly without adding judgment to every ache. It means you stop asking reality to apologize before your heart is allowed to rest. The moment you stop fighting what cannot be changed, your energy returns, your breath returns, your clarity returns, and slowly the war inside begins to end. So tonight, let this truth stay with you. Peace does not begin when life finally becomes perfect. Peace begins when you stop turning every unwanted moment into an enemy. Reality may still be difficult, but you do not have to make it heavier with resistance. You can meet this breath. You can meet this moment. You can loosen the fist around what already is. And from that quiet place, freedom begins. If this message touched something in you, write "I release resistance" in the comments. Let it be your small vow to stop fighting life in your own mind and begin meeting each moment with more wisdom, softness, and courage. And if you found value in this teaching, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell so we can keep walking this path of peace together.